Chapter 541. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know what her man was thinking at this moment. In her countless fantasies, she had always thought that when she saw these two people again, she would definitely want to cut them into pieces to dispel the hatred in her heart. However, at this moment when all of this really happened, she realized that something seemed to be different. The hatred and anger were still the same as before. The pain of being betrayed was etched in her heart, and she would never forget it. However, her heart seemed to be covered by a layer of armor, carefully protecting her. It was the armor that Rongxiu gave her. The hostility hidden in the deepest part of her heart seemed to have gradually faded. Because she knew that no matter what, there would always be someone in this world who would trust and love her gently and generously. She exhaled softly. She actually felt that she had never been so relaxed since her rebirth. At this moment, an idea suddenly appeared in her mind. After she settled these grudges, she must personally tell Rongxiu that she missed him and loved him. Xuanhuan stood beside Chu Luiyue. He keenly sensed that Chu Luiyue's emotions seemed to be changing back and forth before finally returning to calmness. Moreover, the feeling she gave off seemed to be different. He couldn't tell what was different, but he was sure that there was. Moreover, it was a good change. Previously, he had always felt that Chu Luiyue seemed to be suppressing something in her heart. Even when she was smiling, there was always a trace of haze. But now, it was different. Xuanhuan and Jianghu sat down on the last two chairs. Although they hadn't officially married yet, the two of them were engaged. Moreover, they were recently discussing the wedding date and the process had already begun. Therefore, in the eyes of everyone there was no difference at all. After all, Jianghu was still helping to manage the court. The two of them were so close that they had already held a wedding ceremony. The 8 people sitting were about to bow when they were stopped by Xuanhuan. These 8 people were of noble status. Although she now held great power, she was still very polite and cautious when facing these people. The sect master of the Purple Shao Sword sect, Xuanhuan, smiled. "Old Song, I didn't expect your disciples to be so unyielding. Looks like you're still the same as before. You're good at teaching." As soon as he said this, everyone became even quieter and looked at each other in dismay. It seemed that everything that had happened here had been seen by these big shots. The round-faced woman immediately became nervous. If it was because of her that the pavilion master was bullied by others here, Yuchi-sang's face seemed to be more haggard than the last time they met, but his gaze didn't change after hearing Songhuan's words. The disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion are naturally good. The leader of the 9-Star Alliance, Xianghua, sneered. "Old Song, is there no one else in the Chongshu Pavilion? How could they send such a little girl here? She can't even support her own pavilion and needs others to help her. Don't you think it's a little inappropriate for her to forcibly occupy a seat like this?" Yuchi-song glanced at him indifferently. "It's still better than some people who don't know their place and offend their superiors." Xianghua choked. Their 9-Star Alliance's status was indeed inferior to the Chongshu Pavilion. Even though the Chongshu Pavilion was about to collapse, they still had some confidence since they hadn't taken down the title of one of the 4 major sections. He was so angry that he laughed and turned the ring in his hand. "Old Song's words aren't without reason. It's my 9-Star Alliance's disciple who offended you. But I wonder if Old Song has heard of this saying? If one's virtue doesn't match his position, there will be disaster." The air at the scene seemed to have frozen. Wasn't saying this in front of Yuchi-sang's face equivalent to scolding him? This was no longer a test but a naked provocation. To need the help of a little girl who's inexperienced? Has the Chongshu Pavilion fallen to this extent? Xianghua said with a sneer. Chu Luiyue raised his brows slightly. In the past, Xianghua could be said to be extremely fawning over Yuchi-sang and was extremely attentive. Once, in order to ask for a pill, he personally went to the Chongshu Pavilion. However, because Yuchi-sang was still recuperating in seclusion, he didn't get anyone to inform him and waited outside for half a month. In the end, it was only when Yuchi-sang went out and saw Xianghua that he knew that he was there. Because of this, from then on, Yuchi-sang had always treated Xianghua very well and almost treated him as his own junior. The 9-Star Alliance and the Chongshu Pavilion were also very friendly and close. I didn't expect Chongsu Cabinet to suffer such a huge blow. The first one who couldn't take it was Jiuxing Alliance. Yuchi-sang remained motionless in all directions. A just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. What does it have to do with me if no one is willing to help the 9-Star Alliance? Although things were different now, as long as he was the pavilion master of the Chongshu Pavilion, he would never let anyone bully his disciple. Xianghua was furious. Yuchi-sang had already looked at Chu Luiyue. The distance between them was a little far, and Chu Luiyue was standing at the back of the crowd, so it was not easy to find him. However, Yu Qisong still saw her at a glance. Wei Qisong was slightly taken aback at first glance. This woman's face seems familiar. Where have I seen her before? Chu Luiyue met Yu Qisong's gaze and nodded slightly. A thought flashed through Yu Qisong's mind. That's right. I've seen this woman once at 100 Herbs building. At that time, most of his attention was on the seal, so he didn't pay much attention to his surroundings. However, because that woman was generous and rich, he paid more attention to her. He didn't expect that when they met again today she would take the initiative to help. Now that the Chongshu Pavilion's position was in danger, the people in Xiling City were avoiding them. No one was willing to have anything to do with them. This Chu Luiyue. She should know about this. However, she was still willing to step in. It was indeed puzzling. Xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing were not with these people previously, so they did not see the conflict between the two sides. However, before they came, their subordinates had already reported the situation to them. Therefore, Xuanhuan looked calm, but her heart was filled with curiosity. As she searched the crowd, she smiled faintly and said, "Seniors, thank you for coming here today. I'm really flattered that you've taken the time to come here today. I'm really flattered. Your time and energy are very precious, so I won't waste any more time. Why don't we begin?" These words could be considered as giving them a way out, and they all nodded in agreement. Xuanhuan nodded at Chani, who was standing beside her. Chani took a few steps forward. Her shoulders were straight, and her hands were crossed on her abdomen. Although she was wearing the clothes of a palace maid, she looked very dignified. Everyone looked at her aura and quietened down. She looked around and raised her voice. "The top 10 of the Wanzheng competition, please come forward." More and more people walked out from the crowd and stood in the middle, lining up in order. Xuanhuan sat up straight. "Who is Chu Luiyue who got first place?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Shengguan Yu back then with the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, she couldn't be more dead. Why would she come back? However, her back was still covered in cold sweat. When the breeze blew past, her entire body turned cold. Yes. Actually, we don't look that alike. Shengguan seemed to have collapsed and she was much more tired. Chu Luiyue raised his brows slightly and asked softly, "Third princess, are you all right? Third princess, is there something wrong?" Shengguan Yu forced a smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. After pausing for a moment, she said, "Actually, I won't hide it from you. You're a little similar to my elder sister, who has already passed away. When I suddenly saw you, I thought of my elder sister. I can't help but feel sad." As she spoke, Shengguan's eyes were filled with tears. It seemed like she was really sad because of this. Jiang Yuqing lightly patted her shoulder. She has always doted on you the most. If she saw you so sad, she definitely wouldn't be happy." Shengguan wiped away her tears. "Yuqing, thank you. I just miss my elder sister too much." She took a deep breath and seemed to be trying her best to keep all these emotions away. "I'm sorry for making a fool of myself." Everyone expressed their understanding. Could the third princess's elder sister be the rumored princess? Who else can it be other than her? Back then she was the true supreme existence of the Tianling dynasty. Impossible. Isn't there still the current emperor above her? Can the princess surpass him? You don't know this. That person was born with the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, and she was destined to be the princess. Rumors say that she has a high chance of becoming the person to inherit Taizu's legacy. Thus, even the emperor would often let the princess make decisions. It's a pity that in the end, Chu Luiyue acted like she didn't hear those discussions. She smiled and said, "If the third princess's elder sister is here and knows that you miss her so much, she will definitely be very comforted. She will often accompany you and protect you." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 543. Chu Luiyue's casual words successfully made Shengguan's emotions, which she had just calmed down with much difficulty, flare up again. However, she couldn't flare up in front of so many people. Moreover, to those people, Chu Luiyue's words weren't wrong at all. Shengguan could only swallow her anger and force a smile, but her face was a little pale. Jiang Yuqing knew that if he didn't say anything, things would get out of hand, so he immediately changed the topic. "I believe everyone is clear about the purpose of inviting everyone here today. Chu Luiyue, you're from outside the heavens canopy. According to the rules, you can join any sect here. Have you thought about it?" Yu Qisong and the others looked over. The people waiting on the other side were even more curious. Which sect would Chu Luiyue choose? She had the best results here. No matter if it was her talent or strength, there was nothing to say. She should be able to choose any of these sects, right? Who wouldn't want such a genius? I don't think so. She spoke up for the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion just now. Isn't that making it clear that she's going against the Nine-Star Alliance? Look at the way the Nine-Star Alliance's leader looks at Chu Luiyue. He's not very nice. You don't know? Chu Luiyue even offended the people from the Lingyun sect before. Elder Qiushi hates her a lot. She definitely won't go to the Lingyun sect. It seems like she even offended the people from the Purple Shao Sword sect and the Xianfeng Hall in the Tianling God realm. As they spoke, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. How did Chu Luiyue offend so many people? How did she do it in just a few days? In that case, Dragon Teeth Mountain is the only one left among the 4 major sects. Oh right, didn't Jian Fengqi like her? She should choose Dragon Teeth Mountain, right? Chu Luiyue didn't care about what those people were saying at first, but soon she felt a substantial gaze land on her. She looked up. The mountain lord of Dragon Teeth Mountain, Xianxia, was looking at her with bright eyes. Curiosity, excitement, joy, relief, kindness. Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched. Why did she feel that Xianxia was looking at her as if he was looking at his daughter-in-law? Did he misunderstand something? Xianxia could be considered to be the most elegant and handsome among these big shots. Jian Fengqi's face, which attracted countless admirers, came from his biological father, Xianxia. The father and son had the same icy eyes and the same chiseled face. However, unlike the playboy Jian Fengqi, Xianxia was famous for being a romantic. Back then, he had ignored his father's objections and insisted on marrying an extremely ordinary woman. Although outsiders didn't think highly of them, their relationship as husband and wife had always been very good. They had been loving each other for decades. To this day, he hadn't even taken in a concubine. This was part of the reason why Jian Fengqi could be so arrogant. In the entire Dragon Teeth Mountain, he was the only young master. How could he not pamper him? Xianxia looked at Chu Luiyue from head to toe. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. He almost slammed the table and shouted, "My son really takes after me. He has good taste. Look at this appearance, look at this temperament, look at this talent." No matter how he looked, he was satisfied. He and his wife had been deeply in love for their entire lives. Somehow they had given birth to a playboy. Because of this, he and his wife had a headache. More than once they felt that this son was useless. Which family's good son would sleep in Spring Breeze house every day, surrounded by a circle of women? Because of this, he had taught Jian Fengqi a lot of lessons, but it was useless. Recently, there was a rumor in Xiling City that Jian Fengqi had spent a lot of money on a woman. At first, he thought that Jian Fengqi was just being playful again. However, when he heard about the amount of money Jian Fengqi had bet, he suddenly felt that he was sincere. Later on, he heard that on the day of the Wanzheng competition, Jian Fengqi had specially gone to Xuanji Square to congratulate Chu Luiyue in person. This was equivalent to irrefutable evidence. Therefore, he didn't come here today to choose a disciple. He came here to see what kind of woman the legendary Chu Luiyue was like. Once he saw her, he was overjoyed. This Chu Luiyue might have an ordinary background, but why would he care about this? Moreover, Chu Luiyue's temperament was also very good. Those who didn't know her would think that she was a noble lady carefully raised by some aristocratic family in Xiling City. His son had finally chosen the right person for once. Chu Luiyue was frightened by Xianxia's exceptionally passionate gaze. If I really go to Dragon Teeth Mountain, I'll be stared at like this every day? The moment she thought of that scene, she felt uncomfortable. Therefore Chu Luiyue made a decision. I choose Chongshu Pavilion. As soon as she finished speaking, the noisy crowd immediately disappeared. The surroundings were silent as if everything had stopped. Yuchi-song widened his eyes slightly. Because things had happened too unexpectedly, he didn't even have time to be shocked. He was only filled with confusion and confusion. Just now did Chu Luiyue say, "Choose Chongshu Pavilion?" How can that be? Xianxia was the first to object. Absolutely not. How can my daughter-in-law go to another place? Luyu, you should come to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Chu Luiyue's eyes froze for a moment. Is Xianxia openly snatching me? And why is he calling me by my name? This should be the first time we've met, right? No matter what, Xianxia is a reputable figure in West Hill. Is this really appropriate? Yuchi-song immediately said, Xianxia, what do you mean by this? Xianxia cupped his fists and bowed to Yuchi-song. Elder Song, I've offended you. I don't mean to offend you. It's just that because of my son. I really think Chu Luiyue is very pleasing to the eye. So, Why don't you give her to Dragon Teeth Mountain? Don't worry, I definitely won't fight with you for the others. Many people secretly curled their lips. He wants to snatch the best one now. The rest are not as good as Chu Luiyue. Doesn't that mean he doesn't have to snatch her anymore? Yuchi Song stroked his beard. We should let her decide for herself. As he spoke, he also looked at Chu Luiyue. Luyu, I'm very happy that you want to come to Chongshu Pavilion and welcome you. However, Jianxia wants to invite you to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Since he's spoken, I won't forcefully stop him. Think about it yourself. Which one do you want to go to? Dragon Teeth Mountain and Chongshu Pavilion had always had a good relationship. Moreover, he could tell that Jianxia really wanted Chu Luiyue to go to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken so directly. From his own point of view, of course, he wanted Chu Luiyue to come to Chongshu Pavilion. After the previous incident, Chongshu Pavilion was now in short supply. They urgently needed to nurture a group of outstanding disciples to continue. On the other hand, Dragon Teeth Mountain's status and resources were better. For Chu Luiyue it was a better choice. Chu Luiyue curtsied and said firmly, "Thank you for your kindness, Mountain Master, but Luyu has made up his mind." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 544. Jianxia still refused to give up. Luyu, you should think about it again, Chu Luiyue smiled. Luyu doesn't deserve the Hill Master's kindness. Please don't make things difficult for Luyu. Jianxia saw her serious expression and knew that it was useless to say anything else. He could only sigh. Sigh. All right. Since you insist on choosing the Chongshu Pavilion, then. As he spoke, his expression suddenly froze. He had already invited Chu Luiyue to Dragon Teeth Mountain so enthusiastically and sincerely. Anyone would know which choice was better for their future development. However, she still rejected him so straightforwardly. Could it be that there was another reason? Could it be that his son had hurt the girl's heart? Jianxia's mind raced. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. It must be so. Chu Luiyue only saw Jianxia's expression change rapidly. Finally, he said hatefully, "This brat. Let's see how I'll deal with him when we get back." Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Was he talking about Jian Fengqi? Jianxia seemed to have really misunderstood. However, this was obviously not a good time to explain this. Chu Luiyue thought about it and decided to wait for an opportunity to explain the situation in private. Thank you for your understanding, Hill Master. After saying that, she bowed to Yuchi Song. Luyu greets the pavilion master. Yuchi Song looked at the woman who bowed respectfully in front of him. His emotions were in turmoil and for a moment he felt as if he was choking. He didn't have much hope in coming here today. Everyone thought that the Chongshu Pavilion's luck was over. These young people came to West Hill despite the hardships to fight for a future. Anyone with a little ambition would not choose the Chongshu Pavilion. However, Chu Luiyue made a choice without hesitation. Okay. Get up quickly. Yuchi Song got up and walked over. He personally helped Chu Luiyue up. His originally haggard appearance was now much more spirited. Don't worry, Chongshu Pavilion will treat you well in the future. Yuchi Song enunciated each word solemnly. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Thank you, Pavilion Master. She knew that Yuchi Song was a man of his words, and she also knew that he treated her very well. This had always been the case from the past until now. Other than Jianxia, who was full of regret, everyone else's attitude towards this matter was basically the same. First, it was shock, then curiosity, and finally, some people felt sorry for him while others mocked him. But no matter what, Chu Luiyue had already made his choice and the outcome was set. Jiang Yuqing looked at Chu Luiyue with a slight frown. It turned out that Chu Luiyue had already planned to speak up for the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion. However, he could not figure out why Chu Luiyue would do such a thing. Next, where is Xuanhuan? Xuanhuan stood up. Many gazes landed on him, including xuanhuan and the others. This golden-haired youth had an unruly aura all over his body. However, unlike the controversial Chu Luiyue, he had already reached a stage 6 warrior. This was a strength that could be seen with the naked eye. Everyone might question Chu Luiyue's first place, but absolutely no one would question Xuanhuan's second place. He was indeed the top existence among these geniuses. More importantly, he was like an unpolished jade that had not been polished. With a little guidance, he would definitely blossom with an even more brilliant and dazzling light. The major sects present were actually a little restless. They looked at Xuanhuan with a friendlier expression than when they looked at Chu Luiyue. Jiang Yuqing asked, "You can also choose these, Chongshu Pavilion." Xuanhuan spoke without hesitation. Jiang Yuqing instinctively asked. What? Chang Wanzhou pointed at Chu Luiyue. She chose Chongshu Pavilion. I'm the same as her. Chu Luiyue blinked. Actually, she did not discuss this matter with Chang Wanzhou previously because she felt that he would choose with her. As expected. This child looks very obedient most of the time. You also want to choose Chongshu Pavilion? Are you sure? The one who spoke this time was Lingyun Sect's chief Cheng Lifeng. He originally thought highly of Chang Wanzhou, but who would have thought that this kid would choose with Chu Luiyue? Chang Wanzhou frowned slightly. He had already said it very clearly. Why were these people still asking? I'm sure. As he spoke, he had already walked directly towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue ruffled his hair. I knew that you're very clingy. Chang Wanzhou's soft golden hair was messed up again, but this time he was not as angry as before. Ever since Chu Luiyue protected him in the Tianling God realm and called him Little Zhou, it seemed that it was very difficult for him to be angry with her. And during this period of time he knew that Chu Luiyue was mostly just joking with him. In fact, she really treated him well. Then, it was actually somewhat acceptable for her to ruffle his hair. When everyone saw how close the two of them were, how could they not guess why Chang Wanzhou chose like this? He clearly chose Chongshu Pavilion for Chu Luiyue's sake. If Chu Luiyue chose another sect, he would obviously choose as well. These two clearly came from different places. How did their relationship become so good in just a few days? Cheng Lifeng snorted. I originally thought that you were a good seedling, but I didn't expect that a man like you would be led by the nose by a girl. This is really... I don't want you. Such a person would probably not have any future prospects. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned cold. Before she could speak, Chang Wanzhou looked at Cheng Lifeng and said coldly, I didn't choose you. It's clear that I didn't choose you, so why do you say that you don't want me? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Yang Qin paused for a moment. This matter concerns the Tianling God realm. I wonder, Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched. Is she planning to do something to me? Previously, I thought that Yang Qin would definitely not let this matter rest after suffering such a huge loss. As expected. She had been quietly waiting at the side for such a long time previously. So this was what she was waiting for. Hearing that this matter concerned the Tianling God realm, Xuanhuan's expression immediately became serious. She pondered for a moment and said, Come with me. However, Yang Qin didn't get up. There are a few people involved in this matter. Who are they? Just say it, Xuanhuan ordered. Yang Qin looked up as if she had made up her mind. Those involved in this matter are Choding, Ning Jiaojiao, Chang Wanzhou, and Chu Luiyue. When everyone heard this, they were all shocked. These people were all in the top 10. Seeing Yang Qin like this, the matter should be quite serious. Could it be that something happened in the Tianling God realm at the last moment? The same guess appeared in Xuanhuan's heart. She frowned and swept her gaze across these people. The few of you follow me. With that, she took the lead and walked towards the small courtyard at the back. Jiang Yuqing was half a step behind her. Only then did Yang Qin get up and follow her. When she passed by Chu Luiyue, she paused and said softly, There's going to be a good show. There's going to be a good show now. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 546. Chu Luiyue met her proud gaze and smiled. Yes, I hope you can enjoy it this time. Yang Qin's smile froze. Why is Chu Luiyue still so calm? She lowered her voice and said, Be as arrogant as you want. You can be arrogant all you want, let's see how long you can last. She didn't believe that Chu Luiyue could still be so calm after everything was exposed. Chu Luiyue raised her brows. You can watch. With that, she turned around intending to follow the two. Liu. Yuchi Song called her worriedly. Yang Qin didn't come with good intentions. It seemed like she was here for Luyu. What could it be about the Tianling God realm? Chu Luiyue comforted her. Don't worry. Little Zhou and I will be fine. Seeing the confident expression on the girl's face, Yuchi Song's heart also calmed down a little. Be careful. I'll wait for you here. Chu Luiyue nodded and left with Chang Wanzhou. Seeing this, Yang Qin couldn't make up her mind. Could it be that Chu Luiyue already had a way to deal with it? Why are you still in a daze? Ning Jiaojiao walked up and saw that Yang Qin's expression wasn't right. Didn't they already agree on this? Yang Qin glanced at Ning Jiaojiao and felt a little more at ease. It's nothing. Let's go. In the quiet room, a faint sandalwood fragrance filled the air. This was a type of sandalwood that Xuanhuan loved very much. It could calm one's mind. When she was anxious or couldn't sleep at night, she only needed to light a little of this sandalwood to calm her down. But today this sandalwood seemed to be useless. Even though the fragrance kept lingering around her nose, her anxious and depressed mood didn't calm down at all. Instead, it became more and more intense as time passed. She and Jiang Yuqing sat at the head of the table, while Chu Luiyue and the others stood not far in front of them. Xuanhuan looked at Yang Qin sternly. "Now you can speak." Yang Qin took a deep breath. She seemed to have expended a lot of effort before she finally made up her mind. "Third Princess, I would like to report Chu Luiyue for using despicable means to steal the Long Yuan sword in the Tianling God realm." As soon as he finished speaking, Xuanhuan suddenly stood up. She was both shocked and angry. "What did you say?" Jiang Yuqing's face was also full of shock, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Long Yuan sword? Long Yuan sword? Wasn't that the artifact personally forged by Taizu of the Tianling dynasty? Yang Qin knelt down again with a thud. "Third Princess." Chu Luiyue came from a lowly background, but he was audacious enough to snatch the Long Yuan sword that belonged to the Tianling royal family. Such behavior deserved to be punished. Every word that this commoner said was true. "I didn't lie at all. Third Princess, please judge clearly." It was a simple sentence, but it was like a clap of thunder on the ground. It stirred up countless waves. Xuanhuan's brows were tightly knitted together. No matter how bold Yang Qin was, she definitely wouldn't dare to joke about the Long Yuan sword. She stared at Chu Luiyue. "Chu Luiyue, is what she said true?" Chu Luiyue's expression was calm as he said lightly. "Third Princess, I don't admit to a single word that Yang Qin said." Yang Qin sneered. "You don't admit? Chu Luiyue, do you dare to say that the person who rushed out of the crater and snatched the Long Yuan sword in the Tianling God realm wasn't you?" At that time that ball of light was too glaring. She could only vaguely see a figure inside, but she couldn't identify who it was. After she was eliminated, she heard that Chu Luiyue actually came out after her and took first place. Only then did she realize that the person at that time must be Chu Luiyue, because only Chu Luiyue rushed into the golden sea of fire in the crater before them. In this way, the things that happened later had a reasonable explanation. The Long Yuan sword recognized Chu Luiyue as its owner, without a doubt. Chu Luiyue was shocked. "What exactly are you talking about?" "It's fine if you don't admit it. The witnesses are right here." Yang Qin looked at Chou Ding and Ning Jiaojiao. At that time, Chu Luiyue fell into the crater in the Tianling God realm and disappeared. We all thought that she had already been eliminated. Apart from that, there were only the four of us near the Long Yuan sword. "Chou Ding, you were also there when the Long Yuan sword awakened, right?" Chou Ding nodded and said in a low voice, "That's right. That's right." At that time, the Long Yuan sword had indeed started to awaken. As its surrounding aura became stronger and stronger, I couldn't take it anymore and took the initiative to leave. As for what happened after that, I really don't know. Xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing were deeply shocked. The Long Yuan sword awakened? The Long Yuan sword that had been asleep for thousands of years actually awakened again. And they knew nothing about it. If Yang Qin hadn't taken the initiative to speak, they would have been kept in the dark. Xuanhuan's heart was about to explode. The awakening of the Long Yuan sword meant that it had to choose a new owner. For thousands of years, the Tianling royal family had always wanted to invite the Long Yuan sword out, but they had never succeeded. They didn't expect that the Long Yuan sword would awaken just because the Wanzheng competition was held once. Xuanhuan really regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. "Continue," she said with gritted teeth. Ning Jiaojiao curtsied and said, "Third Princess, after Chou Ding left, Yang Qin and I discussed going together to see who was trying to snatch the Long Yuan sword. Hence we set off together. Unexpectedly, just as we moved, Chang Wanzhou chased after us and fought with us. At that time both of us were very confused." Chapter 547. That proved that the Long Yuan sword had already recognized its master. Xuanhuan's heart was in a mess as she stared at Chu Luiyue. "Now that these people have accused you of stealing the Long Yuan sword, what else do you have to say?" Chu Luiyue looked calm. "I didn't do it. Even if you ask me 1,000 times, I will only say this: I didn't do it." She looked very confident and didn't seem like she was lying. Xuanhuan couldn't make up her mind. On the one hand, since Yang Qin and the rest dared to make a scene in front of her, they definitely had evidence. What they said just now was also true. On the other hand, the Long Yuan sword was left behind by Taizu. Logically speaking, only people with the Tianling royal bloodline could have a chance to awaken it. Chu Luiyue wouldn't have a chance. Yang Qin was so angry that she wanted to laugh. Chu Luiyue, and now that things have come to this, the evidence is irrefutable. Are you still not willing to admit it? How long are you going to deny it? Chu Luiyue said calmly. Why should I admit to something that I didn't do? Yang Qiner was about to retort when Chu Luiyue continued. The so-called irrefutable evidence is actually just the testimony of the few of you. There's no substantial evidence at all, right? In detail, Chou Ding only saw the Long Yuan sword awakening. As for the so-called, someone stole the Long Yuan sword. Only you and Ning Jiaojiao saw it, right? Oh no, Chang Wanzhou. Chang Wanzhou suddenly said. I didn't see the scene that they were talking about. Yang Qiner said angrily. You said you didn't see it? Then why did you fight with the two of us? The injuries on her body were real. Chang Wanzhou pointed at Ning Jiaojiao. You used despicable means to eliminate people and pushed the blame to Lu Yu. Ning Jiaojiao's expression suddenly froze. Chang Wanzhou pointed at Yang Qiner. You, along with two senior brothers from the Purple Shao Sword sect, wanted to snatch Lu Yu's treasure. After being rejected, you flew into a rage out of humiliation and attacked her. Yang Qiner's eyelids twitched. It's obvious that you're in the wrong first. Don't tell me you're not allowed to fight back? As for your injuries, you're just too weak. Chang Wanzhou's expression was cold. Every word he said was self-righteous. Yang Qiner felt guilty at first. You have a close relationship with Chu Luiyue, so of course you would speak up for her. What you've said is nothing more than the words of a single person. It's simply not trustworthy. No matter what happened at that time really happened. Chu Luiyue had no way to deny it. Jiang Yuqing stared at Chu Luiyue and frowned. Chu Luiyue, other than Chang Wanzhou, do you have any other excuses? Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Ning Jiaojiao sneered. Of course she has nothing to say. Because she was indeed the one who did it. Xuanhuan took a step forward. The pressure on her body was extremely strong. She looked at Chu Luiyue condescendingly. Chu Luiyue, if you can't prove your innocence, then you'll stay in Xanli Garden today. Chu Luiyue looked up slightly. Xuanhuan's face didn't seem to change, but the emotions in her eyes were clearly seen by Ning Jiaojiao. Perhaps Xuanhuan could fool others, but she couldn't fool Ning Jiaojiao. Shock, anger, jealousy. Xuanhuan would probably be annoyed to death if she saw her face now. Of course, she wouldn't have any good impression of her. In fact, Chu Luiyue could even clearly feel Xuanhuan's deep hostility towards her. She had no doubt that Xuanhuan would definitely think of ways to kill her once she had the chance. Now, if she couldn't clear her name, what awaited her would definitely be torture. The corners of Chu Luiyue's lips twitched slightly. Of course I can. The room was silent for a moment. Yang Qiner narrowed her eyes and didn't think much of it. A cornered beast will still fight. First, I have a fiend. Chu Luiyue raised her hand, and a red figure instantly appeared in her palm. That was a furry, blood ferret? The air froze for a moment. With Chu Luiyue's talent and strength, logically speaking, her requirements for a fiend should be very high. How could she contract with a third-grade fiend? And it was the type with the least combat power? Yang Qiner and Ning Jiaojiao's expressions changed at the same time. Impossible. How could you have a blood ferret as your fiend? Yang Qiner blurted out. Chu Luiyue glanced at her. Dumpling was immediately unhappy and bared its teeth at her fiercely. Who are you looking down on? I'm also very powerful, okay? Why does it sound like I'm not worthy of my master? Since when did this thing have the right to comment on the matters between master and servant? I had this blood ferret when I was still in country Yaoqin. Vice Admiral Mu has also seen it before, so I can prove it. Chu Luiyue directly brought up Mu Qinghe and immediately shut Yang Qiner up. She dared to say that Chu Luiyue was lying, but she didn't dare to question Mu Qinghe. When a cultivator has a fiend, they can't contract with other fiends. I believe all of you are well aware of this, so I won't say too much. However, I have to thank Miss Yang for thinking highly of me and thinking that I can contract with a mythical beast. I'll take your blessings first. If I really contract with a mythical beast in the future, I definitely won't forget you. Yang Qiner choked and was speechless. Xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing looked at each other and saw some doubt in each other's eyes. Chu Luiyue's words weren't without reason. Even in the Tianling dynasty, the traces of a mythical beast were extremely difficult to track down. Didn't Xuanhuan only contract with a 9-colored heavenly pheasant and not a mythical beast? To say that Chu Luiyue's fiend was a legendary 3-eyed eagle. It was indeed a little ridiculous. Chu Luiyue pinched Dumpling's ear to comfort her. Dumpling jumped onto her shoulder, but it was still puffing its cheeks in anger. Because of this small body, it was always looked down upon. It was really too much. If it wasn't for the fact that it had to cooperate with Chu Luiyue, it would have already rushed over and scratched Yang Qin's face. Its black eyes were filled with murderous intent as it glared at Yang Qin. Yang Qin suddenly felt a chill down her spine. Secondly, the Tianling God Realm is where Taizu passed away back then. I heard that before the Wanzheng competition, the Tianling God Realm had never been open to outsiders. This is the first and only time it's open to non-members of the Tianling royal family. The Long Yuan sword is a legendary artifact. Even if it wants to awaken and choose a new master, it will definitely be decided by the sword soul. Do you think that the Long Yuan sword will choose someone like me who comes from an ordinary background and has nothing to do with the Tianling royal family as its new master? Where are you putting the third princess and the other members of the Tianling royal family? Chu Luiyue spoke slowly, but every word was hurtful. Yang Qin and Ning Jiaojiao suddenly realized that something was wrong. They hurriedly looked at xuanhuan and saw that her face had indeed darkened. In fact, this was also a sore point for xuanhuan. She had always wanted to enter the Tianling God Realm, but she didn't have the chance in the past. After Xuanhuan died, she thought that it was finally her turn. However, her Yuan meridian was completely destroyed and she could no longer enter the Tianling God Realm. Chu Luiyue gently stroked her glabella. Thirdly, and this is also the most important point, the Long Yuan sword still exists in the Tianling God Realm. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 548. You're spouting nonsense. Yang Qin walked forward agitatedly, and her finger almost poked Chu Luiyue's face. I saw you draw out the Long Yuan sword with my own eyes. Invite any elder to enter the Tianling God Realm and you'll know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and brushed Yang Qin's hand away. Of course, the third princess can also go in to check and see who's lying. Xuanhuan clenched her teeth. Of course, she wanted to enter the Tianling God Realm. But now that her Yuan meridian was damaged, she would die if she went in. She had been putting on a disguise for the past year, trying her best not to let others see that there was a problem with her cultivation. If she really went to the Tianling God Realm, her lie would be exposed immediately. She suppressed the anger and indignation in her heart, turned around and walked to Jiang Yuqing's side. Jiang Yuqing saw that something was wrong with her expression and immediately said, I'll send Elder Duanmu to check immediately. Xuanhuan nodded, but the emotions in her heart could not be calmed down no matter what. Jiang Yuqing knew that she had suffered quite a blow today. First it was Chu Luiyue and now it was the Tianling God Realm. It wasn't a suitable choice to stay here any longer. He looked at Chu Luiyue and the others. All of you can leave first. When the results are out, the third princess and I will make our own decisions. Chu Luiyue had wanted to leave long ago. She really felt disgusted looking at these two faces. It was already very rare to be able to last so long. Thus, she answered without any hesitation and turned to leave. Little Zhou, let's go. Yang Qin and Ning Jiaojiao looked at each other. That's it? We put in so much effort to defeat Chu Luiyue, but this was the result? Ning Jiaojiao asked unwillingly. Third princess, you can't let Chu Luiyue leave so easily. Didn't you hear what I said just now? Jiang Yuqing suddenly interrupted Ning Jiaojiao with a cold expression. Ning Jiaojiao was shocked and quickly said, No. We will leave now. Yang Qin wanted to say something, but when she saw Jiang Yuqing's expression, she swallowed her words. Although she hadn't been in West Hill for long, she had heard a lot of rumors about Jiang Yuqing. He was not someone to be trifled with. Chou Ding had already taken his leave. Yang Qin and Ning Jiaojiao stayed for a while before leaving reluctantly. As soon as he walked out of the room, Chu Luiyue saw Yuqi Song waiting not far away. Yuranran was also by his side. Hearing the commotion, the two of them turned their gazes over worriedly. Originally they wanted to welcome them, but there were many people around, so they could only stay where they were and wait for Chu Luiyue and Xiao Luo to walk over. Liu Wanzhou, how are you guys? Wei Qi Song scanned the two of them from head to toe as soon as he saw them. Chu Luiyue smiled. What can happen to us? It's just that the third princess called us over to ask some questions. Really? Yuqi Song naturally didn't believe it. Judging from Yang Qin's expression just now, it was definitely not that simple. Of course. Aren't we fine now? It's getting late. Let's go back first. Yuqi Song could tell that Chu Luiyue had some things that were inconvenient for him to say, so he didn't ask any more and only nodded vigorously. Okay. Let's go back. Chu Luiyue and the others left safely. Yang Qin and Ning Jiaojiao weren't so relaxed. The two of them walked out of the door one after another and were blocked by Chou Ding, who was waiting outside. He was burly like a small mountain and gave off an oppressive aura. "I don't care what you want to do, but don't involve me in this kind of thing in the future," Choding said sternly. At first he didn't understand what was going on, but later on he saw it clearly. These two clearly wanted to lay their hands on Chu Luiyue and even dragged him down. Originally this matter had nothing to do with him, but now he had heard and seen it. He was completely tied to this matter. Although it wouldn't cause him to be punished, the feeling of being used for no reason was really disgusting. Ning Jiaojiao was frustrated and wasn't in the mood to deal with him. "Got it?" Choding looked at the two of them warningly before leaving. Ning Jiaojiao was frustrated and could only vent her anger on Yang Qin in the end. "Didn't you say that it was foolproof? What's going on now?" Yang Qin wasn't any better than Ning Jiaojiao. Chu Luiyue caught them off guard. Until now, she still didn't understand how Chu Luiyue had the guts to let xuanhuan and the others check the Tianling God realm. She remembered clearly that the Long Yuan sword was loose at that time. How could it still be there? Could it be that Chu Luiyue really didn't take the Long Yuan sword in the end? But that was the Long Yuan sword. How could Chu Luiyue not be tempted by such a powerful legendary weapon? Seeing that Yang Qin wasn't moving, Ning Jiaojiao couldn't help but push her. "I'm talking to you. Did you hear me?" Yang Qin slapped her hand away and said impatiently, "I'm listening. Do you think I'm not annoyed? If you have the time and energy to complain, why don't you think about what to do next?" Ning Jiaojiao had a temper and was rarely contradicted like this, let alone by Yang Qin who didn't have any background. She crossed her arms and said coldly, "What do you mean by this? Weren't you the one who told me about this first? Now that you've dragged me down, it's clearly your fault, but you want to push the blame to me? If you didn't see it clearly in the end, how would things have turned out like this?" Yang Qin sneered. "Now that things have come to this, it's useless no matter what you say. When the third princess's results are out, it won't be too late for you to come and reason with me. If it's really as Chu Luiyue said, I'll definitely teach you a lesson." Ning Jiaojiao lowered her voice and said hatefully before leaving angrily. Yang Qin didn't show it on her face, but when she recalled Chu Luiyue's confident expression just now, she felt a little guilty. After the few of them left, only xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing were left in the room. Xuanhuan sat motionlessly on the chair with a gloomy expression and resentment in her eyes. Jiang Yuqing walked out and saw this scene when he returned after instructing Chan Yi and Sun Qi on what to do. He paused for a moment but still walked over. You already knew, didn't you?" Xuanhuan suddenly spoke, her voice cold. Jiang Yuqing frowned. "What?" Xuanhuan looked up and stared into his eyes. "You've seen Chu Luiyue before. Why didn't you tell me that she looked like this?" "It was indeed because of this." Jiang Yuqing sighed in his heart and said, "It's just a face. It's just a face that's somewhat similar. Why do you care so much about it?" A strange sneer suddenly came from Xuanhuan's throat. "Oh, is that really what you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 549. Her voice made Jiang Yuqing very uncomfortable. However, he still endured it and leaned over. "Of course it's true. When have I ever lied to you? Actually, I don't like her very much either, but I didn't expect her to become the champion of the Wanzheng competition. Even if it's for her Yuan Meridian, you have to endure it for the time being." Xuanhuan wasn't as easy to coax as before. The incident in the Tianling God realm had a huge impact on her, so much so that she was a little out of control now. She stood up abruptly and questioned, "What? You dare to say that you really didn't think of anything when you saw her face? If you didn't feel guilty, why didn't you tell me anything before?" God knew how shocked she was when she saw Chu Luiyue smile for the first time today. If Jiang Yuqing had reminded her previously, she wouldn't have lost her composure like that. What's there to feel guilty about? You just like to let your imagination run wild. I didn't tell you before because I felt that this matter wasn't worth mentioning at all. You've been too tired recently, so you're feeling uneasy. When your Yuan Meridian recovers, everything won't be a problem anymore. Jiang Yuqing knew Xuanhuan's weakness too well, so he could always persuade her. As expected, Xuanhuan's expression improved a lot at the mention of this. Jiang Yuqing coaxed Xuanhuan for a while more before she was completely appeased. In the end, Jiang Yuqing personally sent Xuanhuan back to the palace and watched her lie down to rest before finally leaving. After Jiang Yuqing left for a while, Chani walked in. "Third princess, young master Jiang has left." Xuanhuan opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear and bright and she didn't look sleepy at all. She sat up and thought for a moment before instructing. Chani, go and check on that Chu Luiyue and find out her background. If there's anything wrong, report back immediately. Also, get someone to keep an eye on the Jiang family. See if there's anything unusual recently. Chani respectfully acknowledged the order and retreated. Only Xuanhuan was left in the hall. She lit the sandalwood incense and wanted to take a nap. However, as soon as he closed his eyes, Chu Luiyue's face would appear in his mind. And that face always made her think of more terrible things. After doing this a few times, she was so annoyed that she smashed everything in the house into pieces. She only stopped when there was nothing left to throw. Man. She finally opened her mouth and shouted. The palace servants outside immediately walked in. Clean this up, Xuanhuan ordered. The palace servants all lowered their heads. There was no surprise on their faces. Obviously, this was not the first time they had encountered such a situation. After tidying everything up in an orderly manner, another batch of identical items was placed on the table. It looked exactly the same as before. Xuanhuan finally gave up. On the other side, Chu Luiyue's group left Xanli Garden. Yuqi Song wanted to bring the two of them back to the Chongshu Pavilion, but Chu Luiyue declined. When he heard that Chu Luiyue was planning to buy a house in Weiling, Yuqi Song was a little surprised. When he saw Chu Luiyue for the first time that day, the people from the Mu clan followed by her side. It was as if they treated Chu Luiyue as an honored guest. She was living well in the Mu clan. Why did she suddenly want to move out? When Chu Luiyue saw his expression, she knew that he had misunderstood, so she explained. Pavilion Master, I was chosen by Vice Admiral Mu, but it was Jian Fengqi who brought me here. Other than that, I have no other relationship with them. Only then did Yuqi Song realize that he had thought too much. He coughed awkwardly. I see. The rumors in Weiling recently seemed to be true. Even he was starting to believe them. It's not appropriate to keep living in the Mu clan. Little Zhou and I have already moved out. Although they said they were moving out, the two of them did not have much stuff. Yuqi Song suddenly asked, Then do you have a choice? Chu Luiyue shook her head. The Wanzheng competition had just ended. They did not have time to deal with these things. That was why she planned to find a place to stay with little Zhou before going to the Chongshu Pavilion. Yuqi Song's expression changed slightly. If you don't mind, I have an empty house for you to stay in. The group walked 3 streets and arrived in front of a house. Chu Luiyue looked at the familiar door in front of her and was stunned for a moment. Isn't this Yuqi Song's house in Weiling City? In the past, when he was free, he liked to stay here for a while. Chu Luiyue had also been here many times. Although this house is a little remote, it's quiet. If you don't mind, you can stay here. As Yuqi Song spoke, he pushed open the door. There was no one inside and many things had been packed up. Recalling the scene of Yuqi Song selling seals at 100 Herbs building, Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Is he planning to sell this place too? Seeing Chu Luiyue's expression, Yuqi Song thought that Chu Luiyue did not like it. Actually, no one has lived in this house for a long time. If you don't like it, no, this house is very good. Little Zhou and I like peace and quiet. This place is just right. Chu Luiyue hurriedly spoke and smiled brightly at Yuqi Song. If not for your help, little Zhou and I don't know when we would have found a house that we like. Yuqi Song was also very happy. It's good that you like it. It's good that you like it. Chu Luiyue said. Pavilion Master, little Zhou and I can't stay in your house for free. Yuqi Song immediately shook his head. Luyu, you and Wanzhou are already disciples of Chongshu Pavilion. There's really no need to be so polite. Besides, I'm really happy that you chose Chongshu Pavilion today. Compared to all of this, a house was nothing. Yuqi Song was sincere. If it weren't for Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou today, Chongshu Pavilion basically wouldn't have anyone to choose. In the end, it would only become a laughing stock. They were helping Chong Su Cabinet and helping him save his last bit of face. Chu Luiyue wanted to say something but hesitated. Yuqi Song was obviously short of money now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have started to sell these things. But he would never take his money. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and said, Pavilion Master, I have something to talk to you about. Is it convenient for you? Yuqi Song felt a little strange, but he still nodded. Of course. Chang Wanzhou and Yi Ranran knew that the two had something to discuss, so they stayed where they were. Chu Luiyue and Yuqi Song went to another small courtyard. Luyu, what do you want to talk about? Yuqi Song looked at Chu Luiyue kindly. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath, took out a wooden box from his universe ring and handed it over. Yuqi Song's expression froze. This was clearly what he sold in 100 Herbs building that day. How could it be in Chu Luiyue's hands? Chu Luiyue said softly, Pavilion Master, I bought this after you left that day. Now it's returned to its original owner. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 550. Yuchi Song didn't expect that what Chu Luiyue wanted to talk to him about was actually this. He looked at the wooden box with a complicated gaze and shook his head. Since you've already bought it, it's yours. You don't have to return it to me. Chu Luiyue persistently pushed it forward. You said that it's mine. Then it's my freedom to do whatever I want with it now, isn't it? Yuchi Song was stunned. Pavilion Master, you've helped me in Xiaozhou. Take this as our return gift. If you don't want to accept it, then we really can't live here with a clear conscience. I'm afraid we'll have to find another place to live. Chu Luiyue sighed softly. The price of your courtyard is definitely higher than the price of this seal. Speaking of which, we've made a profit. Besides, I saw that you were really reluctant to part with this thing that day. It must have a very special meaning to you, right? Since that's the case, please accept it. Yuchi Song hesitated for a long time before finally taking the wooden box. Chu Luiyue was right. This seal wasn't his most valuable item, but he cherished it very much. Now that it was back in his hands after going through so much trouble, Liu, thank you very much. Yuchi Song looked at Chu Luiyue and said solemnly. Chu Luiyue's eyes moved slightly and he smiled. I'm also a member of the Chongshu Pavilion now. Do you still need to thank me? In the future, I'll have to rely on you a lot. Yuchi Song put away the wooden box. Knowing that Chu Luiyue was deliberately teasing him, he couldn't help but laugh. Since this matter has been resolved, when are you going to the Chongshu Pavilion? Chu Luiyue blinked. I'm afraid it'll take some time. I still have something to do. Yuchi Song asked curiously, what's the matter? Chu Luiyue revealed a meaningful smile. Naturally, it's about money. Spring Breeze Restaurant. In a private room on the second floor. Jian Fengqi was lying on the couch as usual. One of his long legs was curled up, one hand resting on his head and gently waving the bone fan. Outside the screen, Shui Lu was playing the pipa. Jian Fengqi lazily closed his eyes as he listened to the music. He was so carefree and happy. Shui Lu was in a particularly good mood today. It was rare for her to finish playing a complete song. When the last sound fell, it really lingered in the air, lingering for 3 days. Only then did Shui Lu get up and walk behind the screen with the pipa in her arms. Then she bent her knees and bowed. Young master, the song's over. Jian Fengqi opened one of his eyes and smiled as he threw a cosmic ring over. I'll take it. Stu to me to you, you to Stu. T's to test sot, Stu. Jian Fengqi smiled. To T's. Little Lu, you're the only one in the entire West Hill. Shui Lu raised her eyebrows. Of course it's because my song's worth the price. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes. Actually, I didn't see it with my own eyes. I just felt that the aura was very similar. But it's probably right. According to my guess, it's a bit like... He gestured another number. 7. He had always been very sharp in this aspect. Shui Lu was silent for a while. It seems that the rumor is true. They've all gone outside? Of course. Otherwise, how do you think they could hide for so long? In order to capture those 13 people, Jiang Yuqing had put in a lot of effort. If he didn't choose to burn the boats, how could he deal with this overwhelming pursuit? Shui Lu stood up with a serious expression. She hugged the pipa in her arms tightly and paced back and forth. Jian Fengqi knew that this was her reaction when she was nervous. Although so much time had passed, she was still very concerned about this matter. But they can't keep doing this. Shui Lu suddenly stopped halfway and quickly turned around. Outside the tightly locked door, there was the sound of light and quick footsteps. A clear female voice rang out with a hint of a smile on her face. Young Master Jian, are you inside? Jian Fengqi was stunned. Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 551. How did she find this place? Jian Fengqi's mind turned, and he immediately understood why Chu Luiyue was here. She's clearly here for money. His face darkened at the thought of this. Shui Lu quickly returned to her seat outside the screen, looking as if she had just finished playing. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Jian Fengqi's face darkened even more. She already knew which room he was in, so why was she still knocking? Seeing that he was not moving, Shui Lu went to open the door. As soon as the door opened, a beautiful woman's face came into view. Shui Lu played in Spring Breeze Restaurant every day and had seen countless beautiful women. But when this woman appeared in front of her, her eyes still lit up. She revealed a faint smile. "Miss?" Chu Liwei looked at the woman in front of her, a trace of surprise flashing through her eyes. Why was Xuanhuan in Spring Breeze restaurant? Wasn't she from Xuanhuan? There was once a popular saying, "Lu Er's music moves Xuanhuan." It praised Xuanhuan for playing the people well. Xuanhuan was thousands of miles away from the Western Tomb, so why was she here? The women in Spring Breeze restaurant sold their skills, not their bodies. Moreover, the cost was extremely high. Ordinary people could not even afford a sip of tea here, let alone listen to the women play and sing. It seemed that Xuanhuan had become the top hostess of Spring Breeze restaurant. She suppressed the surprise in her heart and smiled. "I'm Chu Liwei." Xuanhuan was stunned. Chu Liwei's name was like thunder in the Western Tomb recently. She did not expect her to look like this. Xuanhuan greets Miss Chu. Chu Liwei glanced into the room. "Is young Master Jian inside?" Xuanhuan gently nodded. "Little Lu, I won't see anyone today." Jian Fengqi's lazy voice came from inside. Xuanhuan secretly cursed Jian Fengqi for using her as a shield again. But she still looked at Chu Liwei with a troubled expression. "Miss Chu, you see," Chu Liwei suddenly said. "Sister Xuanhuan, your hairpin is crooked." Xuanhuan was shocked. She quickly turned around and walked to the front of the bronze mirror. She carefully looked at the hairpin on her head. Chu Liwei couldn't help but smile inwardly. Xuanhuan cared a lot about hair accessories. Other than the pipa, that was the second most important thing to her. Sure enough, nothing had changed. While Xuanhuan was looking at the mirror, she walked in and went behind the screen. Jian Fengqi did not expect her to barge in directly, and he was stunned for a moment. "Young Master Jian, it seems like you've been living a carefree life." Chu Liwei sighed sincerely. When she came up, she had already heard that Jian Fengqi had booked all the girls' venues, but she didn't expect it to be the most expensive one. Xuanhuan. If he hadn't relied on her to earn money, would he have squandered it like this? Jian Fengqi finally reacted. "Why are you here?" "Little Lu, Little Lu, After Xuanhuan was done with her hairpin, she heard Jian Fengqi's voice. She turned around and saw that Chu Liwei had already walked in. Her heart skipped a beat. In a moment of carelessness, she actually forgot about this. Chu Liwei smiled at Xuanhuan. "Miss Lu, don't worry. This has nothing to do with you." Xuanhuan was stunned. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. No wonder she felt that Chu Liwei looked familiar. Those eyebrows. Chu Liwei looked at Jian Fengqi. "Young Master Jian, actually, I'm here to ask you if you've forgotten something." Jian Fengqi saw that he couldn't avoid it anymore. He held his forehead in pain. I didn't forget. I promised to give you the money, not a single cent less. However, this young master has placed bets in all the major casinos. It'll take a few days for all these debts to be settled. I can only give you the money after I've settled everything, right?" However, Chu Liwei didn't fall for his trick. His smile became even warmer. "I heard that in Xiling City, young Master Jian is famous for being a playboy. You're also a frequent customer of all the casinos. Even if their debts haven't been settled, you should at least remember how much money you've placed, right?" Jian Fengqi's brain was very good. He always remembered clearly when it came to eating, drinking, and playing. This time he had clearly made up his mind to make a huge profit. How could he forget how much he had bet? "I'm not asking for much. It's only 1/10 of your profits. You should still be able to fork out this small amount of money, right?" As Chu Liwei spoke, he let out a long sigh and revealed a worried expression. "To be honest, I have no other choice. That's why I personally came to Chunfeng restaurant to look for you. I'm really short on money." Jian Fengqi's mouth twitched. Where in the world did this lass hear all this from? She did all the talking. "Are you kidding me? You're short on money?" Jian Fengqi looked at her suspiciously. "You're living and eating at the Mu residence. Could it be that Mu Qinghe doesn't give you any money? He's not that stingy, is he?" Chu Liwei thought that Mu Qinghe really had nothing to do with being stingy. Jian Fengqi, on the other hand, was very clear about it. "Young Master Jian, you might not know, but I've already moved out of the Mu residence." Jian Fengqi was stunned. "Oh? Why did you suddenly move out?" For the current Chu Liwei, the Mu residence was actually an excellent choice. She had just won the Wanzheng competition, and now she wanted to cut ties with Mu Qinghe? Chu Liwei couldn't be bothered to explain too much to him. She only said that she was already a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion and would be living in Xiling in the future. That was why she found herself a house. Everything in Xiling is good, but the prices are too high. Food, clothing, housing, transportation, everything costs money. Young Master Jian, can you really bear to see me living on the streets? Chu Luiyue said sincerely. Jian Fengqi's mouth twitched. She would live on the streets. It would be good enough if she didn't let others live on the streets. But, actually, I've bet most of my money in the casino. I haven't gotten back a lot of it, so I really can't take out so much in such a short time. How about I give you a portion first? Jian Fengqi was about to negotiate with Chu Luiyue. However, as soon as he said that, he received a disdainful look from Shui Luer. Tiske, this guy took out 100,000 white crystal coins without batting an eyelid. Now he's pretending to be poor. From what he said, it was obvious that he had promised to share the money with Chu Luiyue, but now he wanted to renege on his promise. Bah, useless. She walked up and gently persuaded him. Young Master Jian, you've always been a man of your words and generous. Now that Miss Chu is in trouble, you'll help her, right? Previously there was a rumor that Jian Fengqi liked Chu Luiyue, but now it seemed to be complete nonsense. Jian Fengqi suddenly felt a lot of pressure. Finally he gritted his teeth. Then I'll think of a way to raise the money. As he spoke, he took out a universe ring. Then he took out another universe ring. When he took out the fifth universe ring, Shui Luer's expression gradually froze. However, Jian Fengqi didn't stop. How much did he win? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Don't you think that Chu Luiyue looks like? Why is that thing there? She was shocked and pointed at the jade pendant on the couch. Jian Fengqi turned around and realized that the jade pendant had fallen off at some point. He immediately put the jade pendant away, and the lazy expression on his face disappeared. Shui Luer frowned and asked, "Did Chu Luiyue see this thing just now?" Jian Fengqi hesitated for a moment and said, "Probably. However, I don't think she saw it clearly. How could you be so careless? How could you not keep an eye on such an important thing? If she finds out, don't worry. Very few people have seen this thing before. She wouldn't know what it is." Jian Fengqi shook his head. Shui Luer felt that it made sense. Chu Luiyue came from outside heaven's canopy. Even if she saw it clearly, she wouldn't think too much about it. You must be more careful in the future. Shui Luer rubbed her forehead. Jian Fengqi knew that he was in the wrong and didn't explain himself. He only nodded solemnly. I'll send someone to keep an eye on Chu Luiyue. If there are any abnormalities, we'll talk about it then. Actually, he didn't want to drag Chu Luiyue into this. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he didn't want to make a move on Chu Luiyue. Shui Luer nodded. Jian Fengqi looked at her strangely. Based on your character in the past, you wouldn't let it go so easily. What's wrong this time? Shui Luer glared at him. You told me when I wanted to make a move. You also told me when I didn't want to make a move. Why are you so nosy? I'm just too lazy to make a move on her. Can't I? Jian Fengqi raised his hands in surrender. Shui Luer was extremely frustrated. She hugged her pipa and played a melodious tune full of murderous intent. On the other side, Chu Luiyue walked out of Spring Breeze restaurant and prepared to return to her house. People came and went around her. From time to time, people would recognize her and look at her with different expressions. Chu Luiyue turned a deaf ear to them. Her expression was as usual. However, at this moment, her heart was in turmoil. The scene she saw just now kept replaying in her mind. Every Royal Celestial Physician's brand was specially made. There was no possibility of counterfeiting. That piece must be real. But there were several Royal Celestial Physician. Who could it be? Jian Fengqi couldn't have not recognized that item. However, he didn't return it. It was obvious that he wanted to keep it. Although he was extremely talented in the field of Celestial Physician, he was afraid of being restrained. Therefore, he had never thought of becoming a Royal Celestial Physician. More importantly, Jian Fengqi's cuff was stained with something. Because it was just a quick glance, she couldn't be 100% sure. But if her guess was correct, what did he want to do with that thing? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. A large part of the reason why 100 Herbs building could develop to its current scale was that they had always treated their customers extremely well. He had never heard of such a thing happening in the 100 Herbs building before. At this moment, the manservant looked up and saw Chu Luiyue in the crowd. A big smile immediately blossomed on his face and he quickly walked over. Miss Chu, what wind blew you here? Come in, come in. Chu Luiyue didn't expect the manservant to be so sharp-eyed that he could recognize her at a glance. She had no choice but to step forward. What she didn't know was that after last time, She had become the most desired customer of all the manservants in the 100 Herbs building. She was rich and straightforward. She bought whatever she wanted without even blinking her eyes. And she was approachable. She didn't put on airs at all. Chu Luiyue wasn't the only black gold card VIP in the 100 Herbs building, but they were basically all rich and powerful people. They always carried a faint pressure and were very difficult to serve. But Chu Luiyue was different. She was always amiable and had good eyesight. She could often pick out good things after looking around. Could there be a better customer than her? As Chu Luiyue walked in, she glanced at the girls from the corner of her eye and casually asked, "What's going on?" The manservant bowed and smiled. "It's nothing. It's just that those women spoke rudely in the 100 Herbs building before, so the supervisor ordered that they and their families would no longer be received." "Did they disturb you?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. No. She didn't know what those women said to be punished so severely. No wonder they were crying and making a fuss here without any regard for their dignity. They were probably forced to do so by their families. In the end, this was a matter of the 100 Herbs building. Chu Luiyue didn't intend to interfere, so she didn't continue asking. However, just as she was about to step through the door, a woman suddenly broke free from the restraint of the guards and rushed behind Chu Luiyue. She knelt down with a plop and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Miss Chu, please let us go." Chu Luiyue looked back in confusion. This woman was unfamiliar. She had never seen her before. It was clearly the 100 Herbs building that chose not to serve them. Why was she begging her? The manservant's expression turned cold. He immediately stood in front of Chu Luiyue and shouted at the guards, "Are you all incompetent? You should at least take responsibility for disturbing Miss Chu." The people behind hurriedly rushed over and tried to take the woman away. However, the woman seemed to be grasping at straws. She kept begging Chu Luiyue for help. "Miss Chu, we know that we were wrong. We shouldn't have criticized you behind your back. But we really didn't mean any harm. Now that we've been punished, please ask Manager Yu to spare us. We beg you." She shouted and cried. Just as she was pulled up, she was forced to kneel on the ground again. She looked really miserable and pitiful. Chu Luiyue was confused. This matter had something to do with her? She said to the guards, "You guys stop first and let her finish." The guards looked at each other. The manservant immediately said, "Didn't you hear what Miss Chu said? Let them all come here." He looked at the woman and said coldly, "Answer Miss Chu's questions honestly." That woman nodded like she was pounding garlic. She then told Chu Luiyue about what happened that day. Of course, she didn't go into detail about what they criticized Chu Luiyue. She just glossed over it. The rest was frantically begging for mercy. "Miss Chu, we really didn't mean it. We really won't dare to do it again, but this time we beg you." Chu Luiyue fell into silence after hearing this. She didn't speak for a long time. She knew that these people had said something unpleasant. She didn't sympathize with them at all. But in fact, there were many people who criticized her behind her back. If she had to hold everyone accountable, she would have been exhausted. But when did 100 Herbs building have such a rule? Was the status of a black gold card VIP so high? "Actually, what are you doing?" A quiet and clear voice suddenly sounded. The manservant and the others immediately bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Manager Yu. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 554. Chu Luiyue looked up. A man in his 30s, dressed in a white robe, walked over. He was elegant, refined, and steady. He didn't look like a shrewd businessman but more like a scholar. It turned out that this person was the manager of the 100 Herbs building. Yuling walked to Chu Luiyue and stood in front of her, smiling. "It's rare for Miss Chu to visit my humble shop. Why are you standing at the door?" Chu Luiyue was surprised. "Manager Yu knows me?" Yuling smiled and nodded. At the Wanzheng competition, Miss Chu was dazzling. "So you went to watch the Wanzheng competition?" Chu Luiyue also smiled. "Thank you for your praise, Manager Yu. I didn't expect such a busy person like Manager Yu to have such leisure time." Yuling's strength was definitely above that of a 7th-stage warrior. Logically speaking, he wouldn't take these competitions too seriously. Besides, he was the manager of the 100 Herbs building, not the leader of any gang. It was really strange that he would spend time watching this. Yuling raised his eyebrows slightly. He couldn't say that he went to crazily make up lessons, right? Miss Chu left as quickly as she came. When she came to the 100 Herbs building before, he didn't see her and regretted it. He wanted to find an opportunity to meet her so that he wouldn't not recognize her in the future. However, Chu Luiyue lived in the Mu residence and was heavily guarded, so there was no chance. In the end, he could only choose to go to the Xuanji Square. After waiting for a few days, she finally came out and won first place. Only then did he really look at Chu Luiyue in a new light. That compliment just now was also sincere. Chu Luiyue raised her chin. I wanted to go in, but I didn't expect to see this scene. Yu Ling had actually recognized those women long ago. When he rushed over just now and saw those women making a scene in front of Chu Luiyue, he even had the heart to kill those women. If this matter was known by the higher-ups, he would be punished for lack of supervision. If he really angered Chu Luiyue, he felt a chill on his neck. Miss Chu, please forgive us. We didn't handle this matter well and caused you trouble. How about this, I'll accompany you in the selection. As Yu Ling spoke, he gave the guard and the servant a warning look. Everyone immediately took action, wanting to take those people away. A woman wanted to say something, but she suddenly felt a powerful pressure descend upon her. Her chest felt stuffy and she couldn't say a word. The other two women were the same. Chu Luiyue glanced at it and guessed that Yu Ling had personally taken action. She paused for a moment before continuing. I heard that this matter is related to me. Miss Chu, you misunderstand. The cause of this incident was that they had publicly humiliated a black gold card VIP in the territory of the 100 Herbs building. This is not only a humiliation to our honored guests, but also a contempt to our 100 Herbs building. Until now, it was their own fault for speaking carelessly. Regardless of whether it was you or someone else, the outcome would be the same. Yu Ling's expression was indifferent, but his tone was unquestionable. He glanced at those people and said indifferently, if you're not afraid that you won't be able to buy any herbs in Xiling City in the future, you can continue to cause trouble. The struggling movements of the women suddenly froze. The onlookers also fell silent for a moment. This was a blatant threat. No one doubted whether the 100 Herbs building had the ability to do so. Since Yu Ling dared to say it in public, he could definitely do it. The 100 Herbs building had never taken the initiative to cause trouble, but when faced with such troublemakers, they would definitely not be soft-hearted. Chu Luiyue thought to herself. This manager you looked gentle, but he was very bold. No wonder he could support the 100 Herbs building. Those women knew that it was hopeless. If they continued to cause trouble, the situation would only get worse. They had no choice but to leave in a daze. After walking for a distance, the pressure on their bodies dissipated. One of the women couldn't help but murmur in a low voice, "What did we do wrong? What did we do wrong? We just casually said a few words. How did this happen? How did this happen?" Yu Ling coldly retracted his gaze. The mistake was that they had offended someone they shouldn't have. He looked at Chu Luiyue. The frost on his face dissipated and he smiled slightly. Miss Chu, please. Yu Ling followed Chu Luiyue in. Miss Chu, what do you want to see this time? Many people in the exhibition hall on the first floor looked over with envy in their eyes. The manager of the 100 Herbs building personally accompanied. This was the first time. But Chu Luiyue was a black gold card VIP. Chu Luiyue paused. Like last time, I want 5 times the amount. Yu Ling raised his eyebrows. Last time, Chu Luiyue directly spent 90,000 white crystal coins here, which was already considered generous. He didn't expect that this time he would directly ask for so much. 5 times the amount. It was hundreds of thousands of white crystal coins. Even in the entire Xiling City, there were definitely not many people who could take out so much money at once. And looking at Chu Luiyue's expression, he didn't seem to feel sorry at all. The surroundings were silent for a moment. Obviously, they were stunned by Chu Luiyue's big spending. At this time, they suddenly understood why Yu Ling would forever reject those women just because they offended Chu Luiyue. Even if they went bankrupt, they couldn't take out so much money. However, this was just the money that Chu Luiyue casually spent. Yu Ling said to the stunned servant beside him, "Why aren't you preparing immediately?" Chapter 555. 30% discount? Isn't it said that the black gold card has a 15% discount? Chu Luiyue asked in confusion. Even after she spent nearly 100,000 white crystal coins last time, the discount did not increase. But there was a seat on the 3rd floor. Yu Ling coughed. This? Because you bought more things this time and didn't you plan to buy other things? It's only right to give you a discount. In Xiling City there aren't many guests as generous as you. The last sentence was true and Yu Ling said it very sincerely. Chu Luiyue did not think much and nodded with a smile. Yes. The pavilion master of Chongshu Pavilion sold a lot of things here before, right? I want all the ones that are still in stock. Yu Ling was surprised. Really? You want all of them? Yes. Seeing that Chu Luiyue looked serious and did not seem to be joking, Yu Ling's expression also became much more serious. In that case, please wait for a moment, I'll ask them to get it. Because Elder Song came one after another, it will take some time to count all of them. I can wait. Chu Luiyue did not mind and walked casually along the crystal cabinet. There were indeed a lot of rare medicinal herbs. The 100 Herbs building was really good in this aspect, no wonder they were so confident. After Yu Ling finished instructing the servant and came back, Chu Luiyue looked at the medicinal herbs in the crystal cabinet and asked casually, "By the way, General Manager you just said that Elder Song came one after another. How long has it been?" Yu Ling thought for a moment. About half a year. At first he was quite shocked by this matter, so he had a deep impression of it. More than half a year. How much damage did the Chongshu Pavilion suffer to cause Yuchi Song to be in such a state? It was no wonder that Jiuxing Alliance was tempted to take over. I'm afraid that the Chongshu Pavilion is not having a good time in Xiling now. It seems that Miss Chu is very interested in Elder Song's things? Yu Ling asked. Chu Luiyue wasn't afraid of being questioned. Manager Yu, you may not know this, but I am now a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion. News of what happened in Xanli Garden had not yet spread, so it was normal that Yu Ling did not know about it. As expected, Yu Ling was stunned for a moment. Are you saying that after the Wanzheng competition, you chose the Chongshu Pavilion? Didn't they say that they could choose any of the major sects? Moreover, Chu Luiyue was number one. Wouldn't it be easy for him to go to any school? Why did he choose the Chongshu Pavilion? Chu Luiyue nodded. Yu Ling had always been good with words. But he didn't know what to say at this time. Congratulate him? Entering the current Chongshu Pavilion was really not something worth congratulating. Say it's a pity? Obviously this was Chu Luiyue's choice. Chu Luiyue had already expected such a reaction from him, so she didn't take it to heart and chose a few herbs that she liked. Yu Ling followed beside her. He wanted to explain a thing or two to her, but he soon realized that he was useless. Chu Luiyue was very straightforward when it came to buying things. She would often buy whatever she liked. Occasionally she would ask a question or two, such as the age. Moreover, her guesses were very accurate. Gradually, Yu Ling finally confirmed that the situation that was reported previously was not exaggerated. Chu Luiyue could indeed be considered proficient in this field. But why did she need so many precious herbs? According to her current age, it would be a little difficult for her to refine these herbs. However, Yu Ling did not ask. Chu Luiyue chose a few more herbs. Then a servant organized Yuchi Song's things and sent them over. With a rough glance, there were at least dozens of things. Chu Luiyue opened a few boxes and took a look. As expected, they were all very familiar things. She really didn't know how Yuchi Song felt when he sold all these things. Chu Luiyue sighed softly in her heart. She didn't look at them anymore and put them all into the interspatial ring. Everything was settled together. Yu Ling personally made a list, counted it, and said with a smile, "After the discount, it's a total of 1,050,000 white crystal coins." Even though the surrounding manservants already had a premonition, when they heard this number, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu Luiyue handed over an interspatial ring that she had just taken from Jian Fengqi. "Sorry to trouble you, General Manager Yu." Yu Ling took the interspatial ring, looked down, and raised his eyebrows slightly. This was a special interspatial ring of Dragon Teeth Mountain. He had only seen it in Jian Fengqi's hands. Could this money be from Jian Fengqi? But he quickly suppressed the doubts in his heart and took out the corresponding amount of white crystal coins. When he took it away, he deliberately glanced at Chu Luiyue. She looked relaxed, as if she didn't care about the 1,000,000 white crystal coins at all. Her bearing alone was more powerful than many disciples of aristocratic families. No wonder. Miss Chu, you have spent more than 1,000,000 white crystal coins in the 100 Herbs building. A private room will be opened for you on the 3rd floor. It will be yours forever. Would you like to have a look now? Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed with surprise. So fast. Yu Ling's eyes flickered slightly. Of course, he couldn't tell her that he had been busy with this matter since he received the order from above. The efficiency of the 100 Herbs building has always been like this. Chu Luiyue thought about it and refused. "I won't go today. I'll come back another day." She had been outside for long enough today. It was time to go back. Yu Ling personally saw her out of the gate of the 100 Herbs building. It was not until Chu Luiyue's figure disappeared that Yu Ling exhaled softly. Recalling the scene just now, he felt a little conflicted. That interspatial ring? Thousands of miles away. At the top of the floating island, there was a majestic palace that had been standing there for a long time. Soldiers in heavy armor and holding long sabers stood on both sides. The atmosphere was majestic. A tall and slender figure was walking toward the main entrance of the hall. It was Rongxiu. He had changed into a black brocade robe today. The collar was embroidered with gold thread, the cuffs were embroidered with clouds, and a black cloak was draped over his shoulders. If Chu Luiyue was here, she would find that Rongxiu seemed to have changed into a different person. The aura that was once as gentle as jade was swept away, and in its place was absolute coldness and majesty. He killed decisively and looked down on everyone else. Rongxiu was like a sheathed sword. He hid his sharpness and was gentle and reserved. But now he was like a saber filled with a murderous aura. With a light wave he could tear the world apart. Finally he stood in front of the soldiers. Everyone knelt on one knee and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Your Highness." Rongxiu's eyes were as cold as a saber as they swept across the crowd. The unparalleled palace sent people to assassinate I with the intention of rebellion. The evidence is conclusive. They should be punished. Today I will personally go to war against the unparalleled palace. Kill them all. Yes, Your Highness. Kill, kill, kill. Shouts shook the sky. Yan Qing and Umo, who were standing behind Rongxiu, looked at each other. There were many people who coveted the position of His Highness. In the past few years there had been a lot of trouble. But this was the first time that His Highness had issued a kill order. They did not know what the people sent by the unparalleled palace had done to make His Highness want to kill them at all costs. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 556. Tianling Palace. Huayang Palace. Elder Duanmu, what's the result of the investigation? Xuanhuan asked nervously. Duanmu Chun shook his head. Don't worry, Third Princess. Everything is normal in the Tianling God realm. The Long Yuan sword hasn't been taken away. Xuanhuan's heart finally settled down. That's good, that's good. Duanmu Chun looked at her strangely. Third Princess, why did you suddenly think of this? If the Long Yuan sword isn't here, the Tianling God realm shouldn't be able to continue existing. Xuanhuan forced a smile. I know. It's just that I've been feeling uneasy ever since the Tianling God realm was opened for the Wanzheng competition. I feel that the ancestors will blame me for this. That's why I wanted to ask Elder Duanmu to confirm that it didn't affect the Tianling God realm in any way. She patted her chest and frowned. If it's really my fault that the Tianling God realm suffered any losses, then I really can't absolve myself from the blame. Duanmu Chun looked at her and sighed. The third princess was actually quite good in all aspects, but she didn't have the courage to do things. She was the one who suggested opening the Tianling God realm back then, but she was still the one who was worried and even regretful now. If the princess was still here, this probably wouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, the third princess was in power now and had absolute authority. Although there were other princes and princesses in the royal family, no one was more suitable for the current position than the third princess. If His Majesty couldn't wake up, the third princess would very likely take the throne directly. Third princess, you're thinking too much. You're also thinking for the entire Tianling dynasty. The Tianling God realm? He paused, feeling a little hesitant. Actually, after he entered the Tianling God realm, he felt that something was wrong. Although the Long Yuan sword was still there, the world was in chaos, and it didn't look like it had been silent for 1,000 years. However, he had never entered before, so he wasn't sure what was going on. What's wrong? Elder Duanmu? Xuanhuan asked. Duanmu Chun suppressed the suspicion in his heart. Nothing. I just feel that you might feel more at ease if you personally enter the Tianling God realm to take a look. Xuanhuan's expression froze for a moment before she moved her lips. I've been concentrating on cultivating and preparing for a breakthrough, so I don't have the time for now. Let's talk about it after a while. Duanmu Chun did not suspect anything and bowed respectfully. Yes. After you successfully break through this time, you can try to summon the Long Yuan sword. If you can succeed. He paused and swallowed the rest of his words. A hint of resentment flashed through Xuanhuan's eyes, but there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. I understand what Elder Duanmu means. Duanmu Chun bowed and left. When his figure disappeared outside the hall, the smile on Xuanhuan's face quickly disappeared. She knew very well what Duanmu Chun meant. Since her father was unconscious, she was the eldest in the royal family. It was only right for her to take over everything. Although she had full authority over all matters of the Tianling dynasty, she did not have the right to do so. At the end of the day, she was only using the identity of the third princess. The throne of the Tianling dynasty was not only passed down to the princes. If the princess was outstanding enough, she could also fight for it. Just like how her father had planned to officially abdicate the throne during his wedding in Shengguanyu. If she wanted to take the next step, there were only two ways. First, her father had passed away, and she would naturally inherit the throne. However, the problem now was that not only could they not let her father pass away quietly, but they also had to think of a way to wake him up. Therefore, this path was not going to work no matter what. Second, she had to prove her ability and forcefully take over the throne. However, she was not Xuanhuan. Without the Tianjing Yuan meridian, the people below her would definitely not be willing to submit to her. If she could summon the Long Yuan sword, it would be enough to prove that she was qualified to sit on that throne. A Long Yuan sword would be enough to defeat all the rumors and slanders. However, not to mention summoning the Long Yuan sword, even entering the Tianling God realm was a difficult task for her. Xuanhuan was frustrated. "Chani, bring Yang Qin to me." Yang Qin arrived at Huayang Palace and saw the expressionless Xuanhuan sitting at the head of the table. An ominous feeling rose in her heart. She walked over and knelt down. Xuanhuan looked at her and sneered. "Do you know why I called you here?" Yang Qin braced herself and said, It's the Long Yuan sword," Xuanhuan said slowly. "That's right. I've already checked it. I've already checked, and the Long Yuan sword is still in the Tianling God realm." "I knew it. How could this be?" Yang Qin instantly panicked. "Impossible. This is impossible. I saw it clearly at that time. Are you doubting me?" Xuanhuan asked. Yang Qin almost bit off her tongue. "And no." Xuanhuan stood up and walked slowly to her. "Raise your head." Yang Qin raised her head stiffly. Smack. There was a loud slap. Yang Qin was directly slapped to the ground, and half of her face quickly became red and swollen. "How dare you make a fool out of me like this? You must be tired of living." Yang Qin covered her face and her voice trembled. But third Princess Ning Jiaojiao also, smack. There was another slap. "Who is Ning Jiaojiao and who are you?" Xuanhuan found it laughable. Ning Jiaojiao was the only daughter of the Shenfeng Hall's hall master. She couldn't really do anything to Ning Jiaojiao. However, an insignificant Yang Qin. It didn't matter. Xuanhuan stared at Yang Qin and suddenly said, "I remember that you have a superior Daijing Yuan meridian, right?" In the evening, Chu Luiyue returned to the house and was surprised to find a freshly written plaque hanging above the door. Chu Residence. It was obvious that it was Yu Qisong's handwriting. She pushed the door open and entered. She immediately realized that the entire house had changed. The dejected aura from before was swept away. She had just taken 2 steps when she saw Chang Wanzhou walk out from the corner. He was actually holding a rag in his hand. Ran followed behind him. His sleeves were rolled up and he was dragging a broom. Chu Yui's eyelids twitched. What are you doing?" Ran smiled shyly, and 2 small dimples appeared on his round little face. "Luyu, you're back? We're tidying up the courtyard. What do you think?" Chu Luiyue could obviously see that they were tidying up the courtyard. The key was, how did you convince little Zhou to do these things? He looked like he really had nothing to do with these things. According to his personality, he really didn't seem like he would agree to do these things. Ran smiled brightly and said, "Actually, I originally planned to do it alone. But Wanzhou took the initiative to help, so I let him do it." Chu Luiyue looked at Chang Wanzhou in shock. Chang Wanzhou turned his face away awkwardly and hid the rag behind his back as he said coldly, "I cleaned your room. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 557. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh and walked over. "You don't have to do this. It's my room. I can clean it myself." Chang Wanzhou looked at her strangely. "But I'm your follower now. So this is what I should do," Chang Wanzhou said firmly. Although he hadn't done this for a long time, it didn't mean that he couldn't. "You can go and take a look. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, I'll change it." Chu Luiyue blinked and suddenly realized something. "Little Zhou, don't tell me you think that as a follower you have to do these things?" Chang Wanzhou said affirmatively, "Yes. Otherwise, what's the use of having a follower?" Chu Luiyue looked at his confident face and felt a headache coming on. She didn't know what the person he met back then was thinking, teaching him such things. The more she looked at it, the more it seemed that he treated Chang Wanzhou as a little servant. But every time that person was mentioned, Chang Wanzhou's expression would always be much gentler. Although he never said it, Chu Luiyue could feel that he missed that person very much. That was why he traveled thousands of miles and went through so much trouble to come all the way from Nanjiang to West Hill. That person must have treated Chang Wanzhou sincerely, which was why he couldn't forget him. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue smiled. Although you're my follower now, I won't ask anything of you. In the future you can do these things if you want to. If you don't want to, don't. Do you understand? Otherwise she would always have the illusion that she was bullying a child. Xuanhuan thought for a while. You don't like me doing this? Or do you think I'm not doing well? Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly and rubbed his hair. It seemed that this child couldn't understand what she really meant for a while. Oh, you're doing very well. Xuanhuan looked doubtful. But you haven't seen it yet. Yi Ranran said excitedly. Yes. Liu, go and take a look. Wanzhou is very clean. You did even better than me. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Was this something to be proud of? He even provoked 2 geniuses with the Daijing Yuan Meridian to compete here? Helpless, she could only raise her hands and surrender. I'll go take a look now. Come quickly. Yi Ranran ran to the front excitedly. Xuanhuan habitually followed behind Chu Luiyue. After walking for a while, he arrived at her room. Although it was her room, she hadn't had the time to go in and take a look. Under the gaze of the 2 people beside him, Chu Luiyue pushed open the door and walked in. When he saw the situation in the room, Chu Luiyue was shocked. Isn't this too clean? Every place was as clean as new, and even the ground could clearly reflect her own shadow. She didn't take this matter to heart before, but now that she saw it, she finally understood why Yi Ranran was so excited. Xuanhuan seemed to be extraordinarily outstanding in this aspect. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but look back at Xuanhuan and ask suspiciously, Little Wanzhou, be honest. Xiaozhou, tell me honestly. Have you been doing this kind of thing for decades? Is that why you're so proficient? Chu Luiyue couldn't even think of a suitable word to describe it. Xuanhuan's face darkened. Chu Luiyue coughed and walked inside. There was a small wooden coffee table on the small couch by the window. Chu Luiyue walked closer. There was a chessboard and 2 jars of chess pieces on it. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Where did this kid find these things? They're placed quite well. Suddenly, her gaze froze, and she picked up a cup of ginger tea beside the chessboard in surprise. Little Zhou, how did you know that I like to place ginger tea beside the chessboard when I play chess? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 558. Xuanhuan was stunned. I've always placed it like this. Always. Chu Luiyue immediately understood. Did you do the same when you were with that person in the past? She likes to do this too? Xuanhuan replied. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. There were many people who liked to play chess and drink tea. However, there were very few people who liked to put ginger tea beside the chessboard. At least among the people Chu Luiyue knew, she had never seen anyone else like this except for herself. In that case, it's quite a coincidence. That person was called Yu, and she was also called Yu. That person liked to put ginger tea beside the chess jar and she liked it too. It seemed that it was fate that she met Xuanhuan. Chu Luiyue rubbed the teacup in her hand. The tea inside was still hot and white smoke was rising in spirals. There was a hint of spiciness in the faint bitterness, and it was especially refreshing. She suddenly became curious about that person. If that person was still alive, it should be quite interesting to meet him. Xuanhuan was thinking about something and he was a little distracted. Chu Luiyue called out to him twice before he came back to his senses. What? Chu Luiyue said, I said let's all rest and adjust for today. We'll go to Chongshu Pavilion tomorrow. Yu Qisong had already gone back, and she specifically left Yi Ranran behind to help them. Therefore Yi Ranran would also stay here tonight. Although this courtyard was not as big as Mu Mansion, it was more than enough for a few more people to stay. Yi Ranran quickly left. Xuanhuan seemed to have something to say and stayed behind. Chu Luiyue walked over and asked with a smile, if you have anything to ask, just ask. Xuanhuan's back was facing the door, and the afterglow shone on his soft blonde hair, making it glow brilliantly. Even his ears seemed to be transparent, outlining the contours of his exquisite face. However, his facial features were hidden in the shadows, half lit and half dark. It was difficult to see his features clearly. Only his eyes shone with a mysterious and obscure light. He was silent for a long time before he asked softly, have you been to Nanjiang before? Chu Luiyue shook her head. No. The light in Xuanhuan's eyes was instantly extinguished like a candle flame. Chu Luiyue's heart inexplicably, as if it was weighed down by something heavy. I understand. After saying that, Xuanhuan turned around to leave. Just as he took a step forward, he suddenly stopped. Do you think she doesn't remember me? His voice was very soft, almost dispersing in the wind. His usual cold tone was gone, and his usual stubborn tone was gone as well. At this time, Xuanhuan was like a child who had suddenly lost his direction. He did not know where to go. Chu Luiyue looked at his back. The young man's excessively thin figure was hidden in his loose and rough clothes, swaying. A deep sense of loneliness emanated from his body and shrouded him. "How can that be?" Chu Luiyue said softly. "You are so obedient and outstanding. She will not forget you. If she knows that you are looking for her, she will definitely come looking for you." Xuanhuan was silent for a long time. "You are right. She will not forget me. Without me, who will make tea for her? Who will help her grind the chess pieces?" His tone was much firmer, as if he was trying to convince someone. "She will not forget me." With that, he left without looking back. His footsteps were hurried, as if he was worried that something would catch up to him. Chu Luiyue's lips moved, but in the end, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. After all, this was Xuanhuan's own business. When things settled down here, perhaps he could help him look for her. Chu Luiyue stood there for a while before returning to his room and began to refine pills. As her strength broke through to the 4th rank, she also officially became a 4th-rank celestial physician. As a result, it was much easier for her to refine pills than before. After she finished refining 3 pills, she stopped and began to recuperate. It was not until she circulated her force 3 times that she finally stopped and lay down to rest. A peaceful night's sleep. Early the next morning, Chu Luiyue and the other 2 went to the Xianxia Pavilion together. The Xianxia Pavilion was located on Xuanhuan Mountain. Xiling City was extremely large. There were mountains inside and outside the city. The positions of the various sects were different and they were quite far from each other. Therefore they generally lived in peace. Xuanhuan Mountain was located in the northeast corner of Xiling City. What was special about it was that it was a lone peak. However, because the origin power on the mountain was dense, it was a good place to cultivate. As soon as Chu Luiyue and the others arrived at the foot of Xuanhuan Mountain, Chu Luiyue realized that something was wrong. In the past, there was an extremely powerful defensive barrier on Xuanhuan Mountain. However, although the barrier was still there, the power on it was obviously much weaker than before. Chu Luiyue could not help but ask, "This barrier seems a little strange." "Ah? Oh, you're talking about this? This barrier wasn't like this in the past, but a year ago, someone barged into the Xianxia Pavilion and destroyed the barrier. Later on, the pavilion master and elders had to work hard to restore it. However, this defensive barrier requires a lot of manpower and resources to maintain. Our Xianxia Pavilion is in a difficult situation now, so we can only barely maintain it like this." After saying that, Yi Ranran saw Chu Luiyue's complicated expression and hurriedly said, "However, don't worry. Although this barrier isn't as strong as before, the pavilion master and the pavilion master are still guarding it. However, with the pavilion master and the various elders guarding Clear Source Mountain, there won't be any danger." Chu Luiyue smiled bitterly in her heart. Only Yi Ranran could say that so calmly. In fact, if a sect was not forced into a corner, how could they not even maintain the most basic defensive barrier? It could be seen that the situation in the Xianxia Pavilion was worse than she had expected. "It's fine. It's just my first time here, so I'm a little curious. Let's continue. The pavilion master and the others should be waiting for us." Yi Ranran did not suspect anything and led the way. There was only one stone staircase up the mountain, extending from the foot of the mountain to the top. Chu Luiyue and Xuanhuan followed behind Yi Ranran. After walking for a short while, Chu Luiyue stopped in her tracks. There was a trace of dried dark red blood on the steps beneath her feet. It seemed to have been there for a while. She looked to the side along the blood stain and her pupils constricted. There was a large amount of blood scattered around, but as time passed, it gradually dimmed. Coupled with the dust, stones and other things, it was hard to tell if one did not look carefully. However, based on this blood stain, it was not hard to imagine what kind of intense battle had broken out here. This is only the foot of the mountain. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. I wonder what the scene at the top of the mountain will be like. To be able to cause the Xianxia Pavilion, which used to stand at the peak of the world, to fall all the way here. How terrifying. She took a deep breath, retracted her gaze and continued to walk up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. He thought that they were just coming up the mountain to acknowledge a master, but he didn't expect. "Let's go. The pavilion master and the others are already waiting for you," Lu Jiao urged with an excited expression. Xuanhuan finally couldn't help but whisper, "Don't tell me you chose the Chongshu Pavilion because of this?" Chu Luiyue looked at him murderously. Xuanhuan shut his mouth. Then, under Lu Zhiyao and Yi Ranran's enthusiastic introduction, Chu Luiyue and Lu Zhiyao greeted the many senior brothers and senior sisters in the Chongshu Pavilion. By the time they finally broke out of the encirclement, Chu Luiyue's forehead was already covered in sweat. Fortunately, more people didn't come. Otherwise, it would have taken a day just to recognize them, Chu Luiyue muttered. Lu Zhiyao, who was leading the way, suddenly stopped and looked back at her with a complicated expression. "Little junior sister, actually, those people just now are almost all the disciples left in the Chongshu Pavilion." Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat as she looked at Lu Zhiyao in disbelief. "What? In the past, there were 600 to 700 disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion. Why were there only so many left now?" Lu Zhiyao saw how shocked she was and hurriedly said, "Actually, there are still some who haven't returned. I'll introduce them to you in the future." Chu Luiyue asked, "Senior brother Lu, how many disciples are left in the entire Chongshu Pavilion?" Lu Zhiyao sighed. "About 100. Chu Luiyue sucked in a breath of cold air. The casualties from more than a year ago were actually so heavy? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 560. Lu Zhiyao hurriedly waved his hand. "Actually, that's not it. Although there were heavy casualties that time, it wasn't to this extent. It's just that after that, the Chongshu Pavilion plummeted. The pavilion master felt that forcing them to stay would only delay their future, so he ordered them to leave. If anyone doesn't want to stay here, they can take a fee from the pavilion master and leave. Some of them did leave at that time, but most of them left one after another in the past year or so. It would be too presumptuous to say that they didn't have any feelings for the Chongshu Pavilion. However, the current Chongshu Pavilion was indeed no longer the Chongshu Pavilion of the past." Chu Luiyue was silent for a while. "That's not the only reason, right? Even if the Chongshu Pavilion encountered these accidents and fell to this extent, it shouldn't be enough to dismiss the disciples." Lu Zhiyao was conflicted for a long time. He wanted to say something but stopped. Little junior sister was very smart. It didn't seem appropriate if he didn't say anything. What if she also wanted to leave after he said it? Yi Ranran couldn't bear it anymore and said in a low voice, "Luyu, there's something you don't know. In fact, the pavilion master did this for their own good. For more than a year, the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion have been ostracized and made things difficult for them everywhere. They can't cultivate properly at all." Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Someone is targeting the Chongshu Pavilion? Yi Ranran and Lu Zhiyao looked at each other and nodded slightly. Who has such a powerful force in West Hill? Chu Luiyue frowned slightly, but he kept thinking. In fact, there were only a few people who could do it. It's the third. Luyu Wanzhou, you're here. Before Chu Luiyue could ask, Yuchi Song and Elder Shai walked out of the hall. Elder Shai's eyes lit up when he saw the two of them. He immediately walked over and sized them up carefully. "TSK. Pavilion Master, you've really brought back two rare seedlings this time." Previously, he didn't quite believe it, but now that he saw it with his own eyes, he was finally at ease. Over the past year, not to mention geniuses, even cultivators with average aptitude refused to step into the Chongshu Pavilion. Now, two young geniuses with the Daijingyuan Meridian had come. It was really raining red from the sky. Wei Qi Song laughed as well, and the wrinkles on his wrinkled face seemed to have deepened as he laughed. "I told you you'd love it. These are the two who performed the best in this year's Wanzheng competition." Chu Luiyue and Xuanhuan saluted. "Greetings, Pavilion Master, Elder Shai." Elder Shai chuckled and couldn't help but ask. "He said that the two of you chose the Chongshu Pavilion on your own initiative. Is that true?" Chu Luiyue held back his laughter. "Of course it's true." Elder Shai stroked his beard in disbelief. No wonder Yuchi Song was forced to such a state. No wonder so many disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion left. Who could bear to stay in such a state? At the mention of this matter, Lu Zhiyao and Yi Ranran's mood became much gloomier. The few of them quieted down. After a short silence, Chu Luiyue said, "Senior brother Lu, I want to go to the original medicinal garden to take a look." Lu Zhiyao was shocked. "Why are you going there? That place is already barren. There's nothing to see there. Moreover, the pavilion master has already given the order not to allow disciples to go there casually." A trace of disappointment flashed across Chu Luiyue's face. Yi Ranran blinked and whispered, "Senior brother Lu, if Luyu wants to take a look, let's bring her there. It's just a look. It's nothing." The pavilion master liked Lu Yu and Yi Ranran so much. Even if he knew, he probably wouldn't punish them. Lu Xiao hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. All right. But after you go, you can't act on your own. We'll only take a look and come back. Chu Luiyue immediately nodded in agreement. I'll listen to senior brother Lu. Then, the few of them took a detour to another road and walked towards the former medicinal garden. There were very few people in the Chongshu pavilion now. They didn't meet anyone along the way. This made Lu Xiao and Yi Ranran secretly heave a sigh of relief. The further they went, the more deserted and lonely it became. Finally, after about a quarter of an hour, they finally arrived. That's it. Lu Xiao pointed at a barren land in front of him and said, Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. The only remaining door, which was damaged, could not stop anyone. With a leap, Xuanhuan jumped right in. Lu Xiao and Yi Ranran's expressions froze. Xuanhuan actually went in. How were they going to explain this to the pavilion master and the rest? While the two of them were in a daze, Chu Luiyue moved her feet and instantly broke out of their encirclement, rushing to the iron gate. Lu Yu, don't. Before Yi Ranran could finish dissuading her, he saw Chu Luiyue jump in as well. It's over. These two people actually went in. Yi Ranran's round face flushed red. What should we do? Lu Xiao gritted his teeth. Stay here and guard. I'll follow them in. Anyway, those two people had already gone in. It was useless to say anything else. Right now, the most important thing was to ensure the safety of those two people. Yi Ranran nodded nervously. At this point, this was the only way. Lu Xiao quickly followed. He stood in front of the door and gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to enter, Chu Luiyue suddenly turned around. Senior brother Lu, don't come in. Lu Xiao had already taken a step forward, but when he heard this, he retracted his leg and almost lost his balance. What's wrong? Chu Luiyue's expression was serious. The soil here is poisonous. What? Lu Xiao was even more worried when he heard that. Then hurry up and come out. Chu Luiyue shook her head. Senior brother Lu, don't worry. This bit of poison is nothing to me and little Zhou. Wait for us outside first. Lu Xiao was dumbfounded. What do you mean, nothing? Didn't you say it was poisonous? He was still very worried. After thinking about it, he decided to go in. No, I can't watch you guys take the risk. Senior brother Lu, if you come in, it will be considered a risk. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and said calmly. Lu Xiao looked at her calm expression and the uneasiness in his heart gradually calmed down. After thinking for a long time, he finally said, Then I'll wait here first. If there's anything wrong, call me immediately. Chu Luiyue nodded and turned to walk inside. The faint bitter aura that she smelled earlier was indeed coming from here. Moreover, it was indeed poisonous as she had expected. However, because it was already diluted in the air, it was very difficult to detect. Only after entering this place did he have a clearer feeling of it. The closer she got to the ground, the stronger the poison. Xuanhuan's body had accumulated cold evil qi for many years. Ordinary poison had no effect on him at all. When she was reborn, she had already used the opportunity to repair her yuan meridian to improve her physique. Moreover, perhaps it was because of the power of the water droplet, the effect was much better than she had expected. Although it was not considered invulnerable to poison, it was more than enough to deal with such a situation. Unfortunately, she still couldn't identify what kind of poison it was. Chu Luiyue walked in and searched the ground carefully, trying to find some clues. When she reached a certain place, she suddenly stopped in her tracks and bent down. At her feet, there was a withered creeping spirit ginseng. The roots of the withered and curled leaves were suffused with a faint red color. She wrapped her palm with origin power and formed a defensive barrier. Then, she carefully pulled out the creeping spirit ginseng and carefully examined it over and over again. Sure enough, there was a red line that was like a strand of hair from the root, spreading along the back of the leaf. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to tell. What is this? Chu Luiyue frowned and muttered softly. Could it be that this red line caused the manling ginseng to wither? She walked to the side and pulled out another snowcloud vine. There was the same red line at the root. There's messed yuan gravel below. Xuanhuan suddenly said. Chu Luiyue looked up and asked curiously, What did you say? Xuanhuan pointed at the thing in her hand. That red line was nurtured by the messed yuan gravel. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 562. Chu Luiyue was even more puzzled. What is Mestuan gravel? Why had she never heard of it before? Chang Wanzhou took the manling ginseng from her hand. Be careful of the poison. Chu Luiyue was about to remind him to be careful when she saw Chang Wanzhou holding a silver needle in his hand. Then, he pierced the silver needle into the root of the manling ginseng and gently flicked it. Red sand slowly flowed out like water. However, before it could drip down, it quickly evaporated and turned into a faint red smoke that dissipated in the air. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. So that was where the bitter smell in the air came from. Mestuan gravel is extremely poisonous. Although it looks like sand, it can permeate anywhere like water. The reason why these herbs withered and were destroyed so quickly is because they absorbed this Mestuan gravel. Chang Wanzhou took the snow cloud vine and gently flicked the root. The same scene happened again. After losing the Mestuan gravel, the two herbs quickly shrank and curled into a ball. Chang Wanzhou pinched them with his fingertips and instantly turned them into powder. Chu Luiyue was dumbfounded. You mean, the herbs in this herb garden are all because of this so-called Mestuan gravel? Chang Wanzhou nodded. Mestuan gravel is extremely mobile. Just a little bit can easily destroy a radius of dozens of miles. This herb garden was naturally not a problem. However, this Mestuan gravel is not that poisonous to people. As long as you don't come into contact with it personally, it won't affect you too much. Chu Luiyue looked at him with a complicated gaze. Why are you so familiar with this thing? This thing is very common in southern border. Chang Wanzhou clapped his hands, dispersing the powder as he said disapprovingly. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. No wonder. When she was the empress, she patrolled the 4 major territories in Tianling. Among the 4 territories, she only didn't go to southern border. It was because the environment there was terrible and dangerous. From the looks of it, the fact that Chang Wanzhou was able to walk out of there on his own was truly extraordinary. If we don't dig out the chaotic essence gravel as soon as possible, the whole mountain will fall into the enemy's hands in less than 3 years. Chang Wanzhou said lightly. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Chang Wanzhou is definitely not an alarmist. Then do you have any ideas? It would have been fine if she hadn't known, but now that she knew, she definitely couldn't watch as Qingyuan Mountain was destroyed. Under Chu Luiyue's expectant gaze, Chang Wanzhou nodded. There is a way, but it's rather troublesome. The mixed yuan gravel seemed to have been buried here for more than a year. It was very likely that it had already seeped into various parts of the mountain. It will take a lot of effort to get rid of them completely. Chu Luiyue breathed a sigh of relief. As long as there was a way. What should I do? Chang Wanzhou paused for a moment. First of all, we have to pull out all the medicinal herbs in this medicinal garden and clean them one by one according to the method I used just now. Chu Luiyue's gaze froze. There were at least tens of thousands of withered medicinal herbs in this medicinal garden. If we really have to do it one by one like this, who knows how long it will take. Other than that, the other flowers and trees on this mountain are very likely to have absorbed it. Those will be more troublesome to deal with. Chu Luiyue's scalp went numb. Instead of that, it was better to just give up on Qingyuan Mountain. Is there no other way? Chu Luiyue held her forehead with a headache. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips. Yes. Digression. I hope that everything will go smoothly for the college entrance examination. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 563. Under Mu Qinghe's strange gaze, Rong Xiu's eyelids twitched. After a long while he spoke. It seems like Vice Admiral Mu is quite concerned about you. Mu Qinghe also felt that she couldn't continue the conversation. Since Rong Xiu didn't know these things, it was pointless to ask. It was better for him to check it out himself. After all, this vice general was the one who brought Chu Luiyue to Xiling. This is what I should do. He stood up and prepared to leave. It's getting late. I won't disturb Prince Li's rest. Just as he was about to leave, Rong Xiu suddenly said, Vice Admiral Mu, please wait. Mu Qinghe stood still and looked at him strangely. Rong Xiu smiled, and his expression seemed to have returned to normal. This prince has something that I would like to ask Vice Admiral Mu for help with. Imperial Palace, Huayang Palace. Chu Luiyue walked slowly in the backyard. Chani stood at the side and watched. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Chu Luiyue seemed to be especially fond of these flowers and had been looking at them for a while. There was a thin layer of snow on her head and body. However, she didn't seem to notice it. She walked step by step as if she had completely thrown everything else to the back of her mind. These flowers, are they that beautiful? Chani was full of doubts, but seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't do anything else, she could only suppress her suspicions. Footsteps came from afar. Chani turned around and immediately bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, third princess." Xuanhuan walked over. The maidservant behind her held an umbrella for her. Her gaze landed directly on Chu Liyue. White snow drifted down, contrasting with the blooming flowers. A slender woman in red stood among them. She was like a burning ball of fire. Her face without any makeup was beautiful and seemed to blend into the snow and flowers. It was especially moving. Xuanhuan slowly clenched her fists in her sleeves. In this world, there was a kind of person who would become the most beautiful scenery wherever they stood. All the light and color seemed to converge on that one person. This was a kind of spiritual charm that transcended the beauty of facial features. It was hard to describe, extremely rare and extremely beautiful. She could definitely be considered a beauty herself. But it still felt like something was missing. In her memory there was only one person who had such an aura. Xuanhuan. However, even though Chu Liyue came from an ordinary background, there was a faint air of nobility about him. Xuanhuan felt even more uncomfortable. Hearing the voice, Chu Liyue turned around and bowed. Xuanhuan asked with a smile. "It's snowing outside. Why is Miss Chu here to admire the flowers?" "Because I have never seen 100 flowers bloom at this time of the year. I was curious, so I stayed here to watch for a long time. I'm sure you can only see such scenery here. With our current state, we can't hurry up. We still have to bring little four." Chu Liyue quickly sized up the few of them and squinted her eyes. These people were all crippled. 2 of them were one-armed, the other was one-legged, and the man called Little Four had deeply sunken eyelids. He seemed to be blind. Even the man who shouted had 2 scars on his face, which directly ruined his face. He looked very terrifying. The scar-faced man's frown deepened. He looked even more ferocious and bloody. "If you don't want to live anymore, just continue to drag it out like this." They all fell silent and tried to speed up as much as possible. Chu Liyue took a few steps back and made way. They hurried past her. It was snowing now and there were fewer people on the street. These people walked forward and gradually went away. Chu Liyue wanted to leave, but she heard one of them speak. "What's the difference between us and death now? If I knew that place was so dangerous, I wouldn't have followed eldest young master a year ago. Now that my arm is broken, I can't cultivate anymore. I'm just a useless person." His voice was very soft, but Chu Liyue heard it clearly. The other people seemed to be touched and fell silent. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. Eldest young master, a year ago, a dangerous place. Could it be that the eldest young master these people were talking about was Jianghu? The place they were going to now was the Jiang mansion? An idea popped up in Chu Liyue's mind as she quietly followed him. Digression, con, go offline. Update together at 7 p.m. The rest of the mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 564. Lu Xiao thought that she had already decided who she wanted to acknowledge as her master, so he said excitedly, okay, I'll go with you." Yi Ranran also walked over. He glanced at the 2 of them nervously and patted his chest. "You scared me to death. Liu Wanzhou, you're too bold. Fortunately, nothing happened this time. Don't go in casually again." Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Indeed, she wouldn't go in casually. The next time she came, she would probably deal with all the trouble here. After making sure that the 2 of them were fine, they went back together. When they returned to Zhengfeng Hall, where Yuqi Song was, Chu Liyue went in alone with Chang Wanzhou. Elder Xiai seemed to be busy with something else, so Yuqi Song was the only one left in the hall. Upon seeing the 2 of them, Yuqi Song smiled and said, "How do you feel? Have you made up your mind?" Chu Liyue nodded. "Both Little Zhou and I want to acknowledge you as our master." Weiqi Song was both pleasantly surprised and shocked. Both of them were extremely outstanding, so he valued and liked them very much. Of course, he was happy that they were willing to acknowledge him as their master. However, at the same time he had his own concerns. "Have you made up your mind?" "Actually, Elder Xiai's current strength is stronger than mine," Yuqi Song said frankly. Chu Liyue looked determined. "We've already made up our mind. Otherwise we wouldn't have chosen Chongshu Pavilion." Yuqi Song was filled with many emotions. Okay. Since you're willing to acknowledge me as your master, I'll definitely teach you everything I know. I'll tell Xiai later and ask him to prepare the ceremony. There's no need to go through so much trouble." Chu Liyue said, "Pavilion master, the ceremony is for outsiders to see. It's not important. What's important is that Little Zhou and I have already acknowledged you. As he spoke, Chu Luiyue suddenly took a step back. Then he knelt on the ground and solemnly kowtowed. Yuchi-song was stunned and hurriedly helped her up. "What are you doing?" "Pavilion Master, if you don't mind, from today onwards, I will be your disciple." Yuchi-song's hand froze in midair. The young girl kneeling in front of him had an incomparably serious expression on her face. There seemed to be a faint light floating in her pair of black glass-like eyes. His heart felt like it had been hit hard by something, and even his eyes started to sting. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly. "Kowtow." He kowtowed again. Chu Luiyue solemnly completed the apprenticeship ceremony. "Get up. Get up." Yuchi-song suppressed the excitement in his heart. Chu Luiyue stood up. Disciple Chu Luiyue greets Master. Yuchi-song didn't know what to say. Since the sneak attack on the Chongshu Pavilion and the accidental death of his only son, Yuchi Lang, he had been depressed. If it weren't for the fear of ruining the Chongshu Pavilion in his hands and the fear that his disciples would be bullied when they went out, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on. Xuanhuan also followed the same process to become a disciple. Yuchi-song's voice was a little trembling. "Good children. You are all good children. Now, the Chongshu Pavilion is no longer the same as before, and I have nothing to give you. Only this." As he spoke, he slowly and carefully took out 2 golden whistles from the Ring of Cosmos. "There is a trace of my power on these whistles. As long as you blow them, no matter where you are, I will immediately come to you." Yuchi-song said as he handed over the whistles. There was deep nostalgia and pain in his eyes. "These whistles, I made them myself. I planned to give them to Lang Lang and little Yueya. But they don't need them now, so I will give them to you." Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Making these things consumed a lot of force and spirit, and it might take a long time for them to recover. Yuchi-song actually made 2 of them. And just now he said that one was for Yuchi Lang and the other, "Master, who did you say this is for?" Chu Luiyue asked in an extremely soft voice. Yuchi-song smiled bitterly. "Look at me, I always call her little Yueya and I'm used to it. In fact, she is the former princess of the Tianling dynasty. Now that she is no longer here, you may not have heard of her, so it's normal that you don't know her." He rubbed the whistle in his hand. "In fact, she can be considered as half of my disciple. Originally, I had planned to give this to her on her wedding day. Unexpectedly, she didn't get it, and I won't have such a chance anymore." Chu Luiyue's mind was blank, and her body was stiff as she took the whistle. She rubbed her fingers and seemed to engrave something. She turned the whistle over. There was indeed a small word "U" engraved on it. Xuanhuan, who was beside her, took the other whistle. He turned his head and saw that Chu Luiyue's reaction seemed to be a little abnormal, so he casually glanced at it. When he looked, he saw the words on it. He was stunned for a moment. "She is also called Yu?" Yuchi-song nodded. "Yes, that is little Yueya's name. Coincidentally, Lu Yu's name also has the word Yu. This is probably a kind of fate? Lu Yu, you don't mind, do you?" Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked up with a bright smile. "How can that be? This is a gift from Master, so it is naturally extremely precious. If she knows that you treat her so well, she will definitely be very happy." Yuchi-song sighed. "I hope so." Chu Luiyue suppressed the waves in her heart and carefully put away the whistle. On the other hand, Xuanhuan, who was at the side, was stunned. Then he looked at Yuchi-song and asked, "Master, has the little Yueya you mentioned been to Nanjiang before?" Yuchi-song thought for a moment and shook her head. "Nanjiang is dangerous and desolate. She probably hasn't been there before." A hint of disappointment flashed across Xuanhuan's face. Chu Luiyue sighed softly in her heart. This child, she really didn't know how long she would be searching in such a daze. Chu Luiyue sorted out her thoughts in her mind and said, "Master, actually, little Zhou and I have something to discuss with you today. The medicinal garden before Chongshu Pavilion, the soil there is poisonous. You should know that, right?" Yuchi-song's expression changed slightly. "You went there?" Chu Luiyue immediately said, Don't be angry and don't worry. Let me finish. Little Zhou and I found that something was wrong there today, so we went to check it out." "You even went in?" Yuchi-song really couldn't calm down this time. The guts of these 2 people were too big. Chu Luiyue coughed. "Master, we're all fine. Aren't we fine? Moreover, we found that there's something under there. Have you heard of mixed yuan gravel?" Yuchi-song frowned. "Mixed yuan gravel? What's that?" Chu Luiyue then briefly explained the matter. Yuchi-song's expression changed several times. When Chu Luiyue proposed to use herself as bait, Yuchi-song finally couldn't help but stand up and say in a deep voice, "I don't agree. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. He wanted to see where her confidence came from. Martial technique? Yuan instrument? Or something else? However, he soon realized that Chu Liyue's aura was actually rising. In just a few breaths, she had already reached mid-stage 4th stage. Yuchi Song's eyes widened slightly. Could it be that Chu Liyue had been hiding her true strength? Her realm had actually long surpassed early stage 4th stage. No. Her aura was actually still growing. Peak 4th stage. Yuchi Song's lips moved. What realm is she at? This question was directed at Chang Wanzhou, who was standing next to him. Chang Wanzhou answered honestly. I don't know either. He really didn't know. In short, Chu Liyue was stronger than him. Soon, under Yuchi Song's shocked gaze, Chu Liyue's suppressive force had surpassed that of a 5th stage warrior. However, what made Yuchi Song feel even more incredulous was that Chu Liyue had no intention of stopping. Then, middle stage 5th stage. Peak 5th stage. 6th stage. Yuchi Song finally couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. However, Chu Liyue was still continuing. Middle stage 6th stage. Peak 6th stage. Yuchi Song finally reacted at this time. He raised his hand and set up a barrier in the room. If this movement were to spread, who knew how big of a commotion it would cause? Chu Liyue's eyebrows moved slightly. The force in the water droplets surged out again. Bang. 7th stage. At this point, the aura on Chu Liyue's body finally stopped rising crazily. When he saw Chu Liyue open his eyes, Yuchi Song inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Yuchi Song, who had seen countless storms in his life, was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a long time. Chu Liyue smiled. Master, do you still want to continue? Yuchi Song's heart, which had just been relieved, was suspended again. Still continue? Chu Liyue nodded seriously. Yes. If you think this isn't enough to prove my strength, then, enough. Enough. Yuchi Song's eyelids twitched violently. His previous suspicions had already vanished. However, the doubts in his heart suddenly rose. Chu Liyue. How did he do it? You hid your true realm? Yuchi Song spoke with difficulty. Wasn't Chu Liyue less than 15 years old this year? How could he already be a 7th stage warrior? Don't misunderstand, I'm not a 7th stage warrior, it's just that. There's this level of power in my body. Chu Liyue chose a more tactful explanation. Yuchi Song was silent for a while, looked at Chu Liyue with a complicated gaze and finally said, I promise you. Chu Liyue was overjoyed, and only then did he retract the aura around him. The surging force surged back into the water droplets floating quietly in his dantian. However, this force couldn't even cause a ripple in the water droplets. Like raindrops falling into the sea, it disappeared silently. After all the force returned, Chu Liyue also heaved a sigh of relief. This was actually just the power stored in the water droplets, and it didn't belong to him. Fortunately, as his strength increased, his control over the water droplets also began to gradually increase. Now, it was still possible for him to use some of the power to help him fill up the stage. Yuchi Song stared at her solemnly for a long while before he seemed to have finally understood something. In that case, you can borrow the force of another powerhouse? Chu Liyue was stunned. Another powerhouse? Did Yuchi Song think that I have the power of another powerhouse? She wanted to explain, but on second thought, this explanation sounded more reasonable. Thus she thought for a moment and nodded. Yes. Yuchi Song suddenly understood. As expected. Perhaps she also relied on this mysterious and powerful force to win first place in the Tianling God realm previously? But no matter what, he felt much more at ease. That's good. Chu Liyue knew that he agreed, and her eyes curved. Suddenly, a teasing voice sounded in her heart. Girl, I can indeed lend you my power. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Rong Xiu's gaze swept over the few lines of words, and his sword-like eyebrows raised slightly. Yan Qing and Umo were standing at the side, and suddenly felt that their highnesses' aura suddenly turned cold. The two immediately looked at each other. The news from the West Hill should be related to that person. But shouldn't His Highness be happy? Why was it that? Umo quickly glanced at the few lines of words. Whose money? Rong Xiu waved his finger, and the words silently disappeared. He glanced at Umo indifferently. Umo's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly lowered his head. He really only saw those few words. Why was His Highness so murderous? It was even more intense than when he ordered the people of the unparalleled palace to be killed. This. What was going on? Yuemo Rongxiu said indifferently. Yes, Your Highness. Yuemo hurriedly replied. I'll leave Zhang Yufang to you. Yuemo was shocked. Zhang Yufang was the palace master of the unparalleled palace, and his strength was extraordinary. At most he could barely fight him to a draw, but His Highness said, leave it to him. This was not so simple. Your Highness. Yuemo was about to open his mouth to beg for mercy, but he immediately sensed His Highness's cold gaze, and he immediately shut his mouth. Yan Qing looked at him without sympathy. Serves him right. If he knew it was news from the West Hill, he would have dared to court death. If not him, who would he punish? But what exactly was the news that provoked His Highness to this extent? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 567. Yanqing. Yes, Your Highness. Go to the West Hill and give this to her, said Rongxiu as he took out a silver cosmic ring. Yanqing took it with both hands and asked hesitantly, You mean, now? Now, said Rongxiu simply, and his voice was cold. A wave of coldness suddenly swept over. Yanqing immediately bowed respectfully. Yes, Your Highness. After that, she immediately turned and left. Yuemo was stunned. He left just like that. What was the matter that made him so anxious? Also, what was he going to do now that Yanqing was gone? Yuemo Rongxiu glanced at him indifferently. Yuemo tensed up. Yes, Your Highness. You can go back when you finish off Zhang Yufang. Yuemo blacked out. Your Highness? He struggled on his deathbed, wanting to save himself one last time. Rongxiu asked faintly. I'll go now. Yuemo charged into the chaotic battlefield as though he was facing death. Although it was a little difficult, Zhang Yufang was already injured and should be easier to deal with now. Moreover, there were so many soldiers around. Everyone back off. Make room for Lord Yu. Rongxiu said lightly. Yes, Your Highness. The soldiers were well trained and obeyed orders. As soon as they responded to the command, they retreated in unison. Zhang Yufang, who was in the middle of killing, suddenly appeared in Yumo's sight. The corner of Yumo's eyes twitched. He regretted it so much. He shouldn't have looked at him like that. What terrible thing had happened in the West Hill? Chongshu Pavilion. The sun was shining brightly and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. Chu Luiyue and the others came to the old herb garden again. So, Master, you still don't know who broke into the Chongshu Pavilion that day? Along the way, Chu Luiyue obtained a lot of information from Yuqi Song. Although he had heard Lu Jiao mention it before, he was not at the Chongshu Pavilion that day. It was more convenient and accurate to ask Yuqi Song about these things. Sure enough, Chu Luiyue discovered many details that Lu Jiao hadn't mentioned before. Those people are very powerful and all of them are wearing masks and black robes. They came at night, so I didn't see anything clearly. Although more than a year had passed, Yuqi Song could still recall the scene vividly. Everything that happened that day was deeply engraved in his mind, becoming the deepest and most painful scar that could not be erased. The other party came prepared and caught us off guard. They didn't even have time to protect the lives of the elders and disciples in the pavilion, let alone the medicinal garden. When we came back after everything was over, the guards were all dead. Yuqi Song's seemingly calm face trembled slightly. At that time, we saw that many medicinal herbs in the medicinal garden were damaged. We wanted to check it out, but because of the heavy casualties in the pavilion, we didn't pay attention to it for a while. Who knew that the next day the remaining medicinal herbs had all withered? A month later, the medicinal garden was already in ruins. At that time, we sent people to continue planting medicinal herbs, only to find that the soil of the medicinal garden could no longer grow any useful medicinal herbs. But by then it was too late. Chu Liwei listened seriously while thinking silently in his heart. Since this Mestuan gravel is something from Nanjiang, then only those who have been to Nanjiang can have this thing. Master, do you know who in the Tianling dynasty has been to Nanjiang in recent years? Yuqi Song paused for a while before saying, Jiang Yuqing has been there. Digression. You have to get the ideal results for the college entrance examination. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 568. He had been there? Chu Liwei was very surprised. When? Yuqi Song narrowed his eyes and recalled for a while before saying, it was probably after little Yueyao was gone. At that time, everyone said that little Yuya was possessed by the devil. He heard that there was a medicine in Nanjiang that could bring people back to life, so he brought people there, but he couldn't find it after that. Instead, most of the people he brought there were killed. After that, Jiang Yuqing recuperated for a long time. He didn't even go to little Yuya's funeral. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly. Funeral? How was that possible? At that time, her Tianjing Yuan meridian had been damaged and her entire body had been destroyed and completely dissipated. How could she still? Yes. Originally, according to little Yuya's identity, it should have been a grand funeral. However, because the name of Qi deviation was really unpleasant, it was just an ordinary funeral for a princess. Chu Liyue only felt that it was ridiculous and ridiculous. Those people tried to force her into a dead end, but in the end they didn't forget to hold a funeral for her? That's right. Of course they had to do that. Only in this way could they be cleared of suspicion. And the so-called, in order to save her, he went to Nanjiang without hesitation. Jiang Yuqing was actually a complete actor. He obviously went to Nanjiang for other reasons. He was just using her as a cover. However, in the eyes of others, they might still think that he was extremely infatuated. Deep hatred surged out from the bottom of her heart. It almost caused her chest to explode. The fists in her sleeves were already clenched so tightly that her bones were almost crushed. Jiang Yuqing, you're really good. Seeing that Chu Liyue lowered her head and didn't move, Yuqi Song asked with concern, Chu Liyue, are you okay? Chu Liyue closed her eyes. When she raised her head again, her expression had returned to normal. She smiled faintly and said, Nothing. I was just thinking, what kind of heavenly treasure is it? It's so magical that it can actually attract eldest young master Jiang to go there regardless of his life. As she spoke, she looked at Changwanzhou. Little boat, you grew up in southern border. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Changwanzhou shook his head. No. Yuqi Song pondered for a moment and said, Actually, I have always had my suspicions about this matter. However, I have never had any evidence. Now, it seems that he went to the southern border not for Little Crescent but for something else. If the Mestyuan gravel was really brought back by him, Yuqi Song suddenly thought of something. He frowned and stopped. Chu Liyue took a step forward. Master, I haven't been in West Hill for long, but I've heard a lot about the Chongshu Pavilion. I want to ask you a question. Is there someone secretly targeting the Chongshu Pavilion? Yuqi Song's face seemed to have aged several years in an instant. He slowly sighed and smiled bitterly. You're so smart. It's normal for you to guess. That's right. Since that incident more than a year ago, someone has indeed been targeting our Chongshu Pavilion. They've been making things difficult for us both openly and secretly. You dismissed many disciples in the sect because of this. Yuqi Song nodded stiffly. A hint of bitterness flashed across his face. Before this, he had never imagined that he would be forced to such a state. Chu Liyue paused and asked in a low voice, That person, is the third Princess Xuanhuan? Yuqi Song suddenly looked at Chu Liyue and asked in surprise, How did you? No, it's not her. Yuqi Song began to deny it, but his previous reaction had already proved that Chu Liyue's guess was correct. Chu Liyue frowned. Why would she do this? Was it just because Yuqi Song was half her master and had a close relationship with her? But if that was the case, Xuanhuan had too many people to deal with. Xuanhuan would be exhausted if she dealt with them one by one. Moreover, the Chongshu Pavilion was at its peak at that time. It was not easy to deal with them. It would take a lot of manpower and resources. Speaking of which, it was simply a thankless task. Xuanhuan would only do this if she was out of her mind. Yuqi Song refused to answer Chu Liyue's question. Liu, this has nothing to do with you. Don't continue to guess and don't get involved in this matter. I'm already a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion. How can it have nothing to do with me? She doesn't only want to harm you, but also the entire Chongshu Pavilion. Liu, master is begging you? Yuqi Song's eyes flashed with a hint of pain and struggle as he said in a deep voice. Chu Liyue suddenly paused. After a moment she finally nodded. Okay. Yuqi Song let out a long sigh. Of course, he knew that Chu Liyue was doing this for him, and also for the entire Chongshu Pavilion. However, this matter involved too many people and was full of danger. He really didn't want to drag these two children down with him. The room fell into a short silence. Changwanzhou suddenly said, Those who have used the Mestyuan gravel will leave traces on their bodies. Chu Liyue and Yuqi Song looked over at the same time. What did you say? Changwanzhou raised his hand. If you want to use the Mestyuan gravel, you need to use fresh blood as a primer. The person who acted as the primer would leave a very faint red line from the palm to the wrist. Chu Liyue's eyes lit up. So, as long as we find a way to see Jiang Yuqing's hand, we can confirm whether he did it or not. Yes. Yuqi Song was delighted at first, but then he frowned and said, "This method is simple, but it's also troublesome. Jiang Yuqing is now in a high position and has guards around him. It's not so easy to get close to him. Besides, even if he's really the mastermind behind this, he might not do it himself. This messed yuan gravel needed fresh blood as a primer and could devour the force in a person's body. It was extremely strange. Jiang Yuqing could have just sent a subordinate to do it. Why did he have to do it himself? Chang Wanzhou said, "If this matter involves him, then he must have done it himself." Chu Liyue immediately asked, "Why?" "Because only in this way can he completely control the situation of the messed yuan gravel. And more importantly, a part of the devouring power of the messed yuan gravel will enter his body and improve his cultivation." Chu Liyue's pupils constricted slightly. It turned out that the messed yuan gravel had such a function. This kind of behavior was really sinister and despicable. However, it really seemed like something Jiang Yuqing would do. Chu Liyue knew him too well. In the past, his talent was not as good as hers. Although he didn't say it on the surface, he had always been very concerned about this matter in his heart. Although he was already considered a top genius compared to most people, he was still not satisfied. He was very diligent on the path of cultivation. In order to improve his strength, he could almost be considered crazy. Now that there was such a way, he might not give it a try. Chu Liyue said firmly, "In any case, he has been to Nanjiang, so there's this possibility. Whether he did it or not, we'll know once we investigate." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 569. Tianling Palace. Jiang Yuqing hurriedly came to Huayang Palace. When the palace servants saw him, they all bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Prince Consort." Jiang Yuqing asked in a low voice, "Where's the third princess?" A palace servant said, "The third princess just rested in the side palace." When Jiang Yuqing heard this, he immediately went to the side palace. A few palace servants immediately went forward to stop him. "Prince Consort, the third princess hasn't been sleeping well these few days, and she finally fell asleep with much difficulty. Why don't you wait first?" Jiang Yuqing's gaze turned cold. "I have something to discuss with the third princess. If it's delayed, can you bear the responsibility?" The few palace servants were shocked and looked at each other. "Miss Chani instructed us to stop anyone who comes to see the princess. But this person is the Prince Consort after all." Jiang Yuqing walked forward. When he was about to reach the door, Chani, who was standing in front of the door, bowed. "Prince Consort, the third princess is currently taking a nap. Please wait for a while." Jiang Yuqing sneered. "I'm the third princess's Prince Consort. Do I have to listen to a palace servant like you about whether I can see the third princess?" Chani knew that he was really angry, so she immediately knelt down. "I don't dare. But the third princess, I'll take responsibility for anything." As he spoke, Jiang Yuqing had already walked around her, walked to the door and pushed it open with one hand. Chani looked on nervously. Jiang Yuqing glanced at her coldly and pushed the door open. He directly walked in and went behind the screen to see xuanhuan sleeping on the small couch. Hearing the commotion, she knitted her brows and opened her eyes. "Yuqing? Why are you here?" She looked tired and there were 2 dark circles under her eyes. It was obvious that she hadn't rested well recently. When she realized that Jiang Yuqing actually barged in himself, anger flashed across her face. "Chani, what did this consort tell you?" Chani looked down. "I didn't do my job well. Third princess, please punish me." Jiang Yuqing walked over. "Don't blame her. I was too worried about you, so I insisted on coming in. You know that they don't dare to stop me." Xuanhuan's expression eased a little. "Go kneel outside for 4 hours." "Yes." Chani agreed and obediently knelt down. Jiang Yuqing sat down next to Xuanhuan and tidied up her messy hair. "Haven't you been sleeping well these past few days? Why don't you light some nerve-soothing incense?" Xuanhuan lay back down. "Yes, but it's useless." She hesitated for a moment before whispering, "I don't know why, but I've been feeling uneasy lately. Sometimes I even have nightmares." Jiang Yuqing comforted her for a while. Xuanhuan took the initiative to ask, "By the way, why are you here today?" Jiang Yuqing's eyes flickered. "I have some free time today, so I thought I'd come and see you. Also, I heard that you summoned Yang Qiner to the palace the other day?" Xuanhuan curled her lips without a smile. He was indeed here for this. That's right. Jiang Yuqing saw her calm expression and didn't know how to ask. After deliberating for a while, he said, "You haven't let her go yet, right?" The smile on Xuanhuan's face deepened. "That's right. I looked for her and told her that everything is fine in the Tianling God realm, and the Long Yuan sword is still there. What she said previously was all fake." Jiang Yuqing had already guessed this outcome, so he wasn't surprised. "Isn't this the best outcome?" As for Yang Qin, it's indeed wrong for her to deceive you and me, but I think she just misunderstood and didn't do it on purpose. After all, no one would joke about their own life, right? Just punish her slightly and let her go." Xuanhuan laughed. "What are you worried about? I saw that her attitude of admitting her mistake wasn't bad, so I didn't pursue the matter further and let her stay in the palace for 2 more days. What? Is there something wrong?" Jiang Yuqing's expression finally turned cold. You're too impulsive. It's true that she has a Daijing Yuan meridian, but we already agreed not to act rashly. How can you detain her in the palace? Do you think I don't know what you're planning to do?" Xuanhuan looked at him coldly with a mocking gaze. "You came here just to tell this consort these things?" Seeing her stubborn attitude, Jiang Yuqing got even angrier and stood up abruptly. "You, knock knock." There was a knock on the door. "Third princess, I heard that you're already up. I made longan and lily porridge for you. Do you want some?" Hearing this voice, Jiang Yuqing was stunned as he turned around to look. This was clearly Yang Qin's voice. He looked at Xuanhuan in bewilderment. "You didn't?" Xuanhuan didn't look at him and just said lazily, "Come in." Creak. The door opened and a woman walked in with a bowl of porridge. It was Yang Qin. Jiang Yuqing quickly scanned her body, and she didn't seem to have any abnormalities. "Greetings, Prince Consort." Yang Qin bowed to him again and put down the porridge. "I've said it a few times. I like you, so I'm keeping you for a few more days. Just leave these things to the palace servants." Yang Qin smiled gently. "Qin understands." Xuanhuan waved her hand. "I still have something to discuss with Prince Consort. You can leave first." "Yes. Then remember to use this porridge. It won't taste good if it gets cold." With that, Yang Qin left respectfully, not forgetting to close the door. After she left, Xuanhuan raised her chin at Jiang Yuqing. "If you still have any doubts, why don't you check that bowl of porridge too?" Her words were sarcastic and her gaze was mocking. It was rare for Jiang Yuqing to feel embarrassed. Could it be that he really misunderstood? However, her emotions had been very unstable previously, and after encountering Yang Qin, he couldn't help but worry and think that I was wrong. Jiang Yuqing pressed his fist against his lips and coughed. Don't be angry. It's my fault." Xuanhuan didn't say anything and just looked at him. Jiang Yuqing couldn't sit still under this gaze, so he could only say, "You haven't rested well recently, so I won't disturb you. Sleep well. I'm here for everything else. Don't worry." Without waiting for Xuanhuan's reply, he turned around and left in a hurry. After his figure disappeared from the hall for a long time, Xuanhuan snorted softly and stood up to pick up the bowl of porridge. With a gentle stir of the spoon, a trace of blood appeared. She finished the bowl of porridge without changing her expression. After a while, Yang Qin walked back quietly. Seeing that Xuanhuan had finished the bowl of porridge, she quickly retracted her gaze. Xuanhuan pondered for a moment and said, "You can go back today." Yang Qin was a little surprised. "Didn't you say that it would take 5 days? You've only stayed in the palace for a day or two and he's already here with suspicion. It's not appropriate for you to stay any longer." Jiang Yuqing might have believed her today, but he had always been a suspicious person. It was very likely that he would continue to investigate. Yang Qin hesitated for a moment. "Yes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 570. In the Chongshu Pavilion. Chu Luiyue and the others came to the herb garden together. Yuchi Song stood outside the door and set up a huge barrier that enveloped the entire herb garden. "With me here, no one will disturb you," Yuchi Song said with a hint of worry in her eyes. Chu Luiyue nodded. "Thank you, master." Then she entered the herb garden. Chang Wanzhou followed closely behind. Chu Luiyue turned around and looked at him in surprise. Chang Wanzhou said, "I said before that I would help you guard." Chu Luiyue raised her chin. "You can also stay outside the barrier. Isn't master right there?" Chang Wanzhou said stubbornly, "I'll be closer to you. If anything goes wrong, I can help you immediately." As if he was worried that Chu Luiyue would not agree, he quickly added another sentence. After all, no one here knows the mest yuan gravel better than I do. Chu Luiyue looked at his determined face and smiled. Okay. The two of them came to the middle of the herb garden. Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou looked at each other. Chang Wanzhou nodded slightly. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath, took out a dagger and gently cut her left palm. Immediately, a bloody wound appeared. Dark red blood immediately gushed out of the wound. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her palms facing down and placed them on the ground. A thick bead of blood silently gushed out and quickly soaked into the ochre-red ground. A moment later, the dried-up herbs in the surroundings suddenly began to move. The nearest suchi plum suddenly shattered from the roots. The mest yuan gravel flowed out of it and headed toward Chu Luiyue. Soon, the second, the third, with Chu Luiyue as the center, countless abandoned herbs in the surroundings shattered silently. The mest yuan gravel mixed in them also began to rush toward Chu Luiyue. It was like countless blood-colored hair fluttering in the wind, but also like fine sand flowing over. Although there was very little mest yuan gravel in each plant, when they all gathered together, it quickly became a spectacular sight. After about 15 minutes, the ground around Chu Luiyue seemed to have countless red rivers. And their destination was Chu Luiyue. It was as if there was an invisible hand controlling all of this. As time passed, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the blood in her body was quickly flowing out of the wound on her palm. She lowered her eyes to take a look. The ground under her palm was gradually dyed red, and it was slowly spreading to the surroundings. At the same time, the force in her body was being consumed faster than her blood. Chu Luiyue's expression. No wonder Chang Wanzhou was so determined to oppose it. The mest yuan gravel's consumption of force was indeed too terrifying. She had just cleared a distance of 20 steps around her when she already felt the force in her body begin to be consumed at an abnormal speed. But this herb garden was extremely large. Mingxi shook his head with a worried expression. A trace of disappointment flashed through Jiang Yuqing's eyes. Why hasn't he gotten better yet? They had stopped taking the medicine long ago, and had been nursing His Majesty's body. Logically speaking, His Majesty should be able to wake up. But until now there was still no sign of him waking up. Mingxi said, "We can understand eldest young Master Jiang's worries. But this kind of thing, sometimes it's hard to say. Maybe His Majesty will wake up tomorrow. Don't worry too much." Jiang Yuqing could only nod. "Sorry to trouble you, Lord Zhuo. This is our duty. How can it be troublesome? In any case, we will do our best to make His Majesty wake up as soon as possible. If eldest young Master Jiang has nothing else to say, I'll go back first to prepare the medicine for His Majesty." "Lord Zhuo, please." Jiang Yuqing took half a step back. Mingxi cupped his hands and left with the manservant. However, just as he took 2 steps, Jiang Yuqing suddenly stopped him. "Lord Zhuo, please wait." Mingxi stood still and looked back at him. "Eldest young Master Jiang, is there anything else?" Jiang Yuqing's gaze fell on Mingxi's belt, and a trace of doubt arose in his heart. When imperial doctors entered the palace, they had to hang their jade pendants on their belts. But Mingxi didn't have one on him. "Lord Zhuo, where's your jade pendant?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 571. Mingxi followed Jiang Yuqing's gaze and glanced at himself. "Oh, you're talking about that. I don't know where I lost it and couldn't find it. In 2 days the new one should be ready and sent over." Jiang Yuqing nodded in understanding. "I see." Mingxi looked at him and asked tentatively. "I know that imperial physicians should wear the jade pendant when they enter the palace. But His Majesty's treatment can't be delayed. I thought about it and decided to come." Jiang Yuqing smiled. "Don't think too much, Lord Zhuo. I don't mean to blame you. I just happened to see it and was curious. You're right. His Majesty's health is the most important thing. Besides, since the new one is almost ready, there's no need to pursue this matter." Mingxi breathed a sigh of relief. "However, this is a symbol of status after all. Lord Zhuo should be careful in the future." Of course. The two exchanged a few more words before Mingxi finally left. Jiang Yuqing turned around to take a look before turning around to leave. Chongshu Pavilion. Chu Luiyue was still sitting in the same place. A lot of mest yuan gravel had gathered around her palm. Her lips were a little pale, but fortunately she was still in good spirits. 1/3 of the mest yuan gravel in the herb garden had been gathered. The mest yuan gravel, which was as small as dust, had gradually condensed into a larger gravel. However, when they were deposited together, they were still like liquid and could flow freely back and forth. The force in Chu Liyue's limbs and bones was almost exhausted. With a thought, a vigorous force surged out of the water droplet. The feeling of exhaustion disappeared instantly. Chu Liyue was refreshed and sped up. Xuanhuan watched nervously from the side, his thin lips tightly pursed. Song, who was standing outside, watched this scene with his heart in his mouth. Gradually, more and more messed yuan gravel gathered around Chu Liyue's palm. When night fell, Chu Liyue finally gathered all the mixed yuan gravel in the herb garden. She adjusted her breathing and looked up at Song. Master, I'm afraid you'll have to remove this barrier first. Otherwise, it would affect her ability to gather the chaos yuan gravel outside. Song was worried, but he still nodded and agreed. All right. With that, he waved his sleeve and the barrier dissipated. This time, Chu Liyue was no longer under any protection. Other than Xuanhuan, who was standing nearby, Song was already standing outside. Chu Liyue closed his eyes and held his breath. Force continuously gushed out from the water droplet. In the darkness of the night, nothing could be seen clearly. Only the faint rustling sound could be heard coming from all directions. The closer they got to Chu Liyue, the clearer the sound became. There was no need to look to know that it was the messed yuan gravel that had spread throughout the entire Qingyuan mountain. Hearing this sound, Song's hair stood on end. Oh, how much was there? The entire Qingyuan mountain might have been completely covered by this messed yuan gravel. If it weren't for Chu Liyue today, they could only let the messed yuan gravel continue to spread. It wouldn't be long before this mountain would become a wasteland. Thinking of this, Song's heart was filled with lingering fear. If it was really Jiang Yuqing who did it, why did he do it? The night passed in a hurry. Song and Xuanhuan stood guard for the entire night. When the morning sun shone down, the endless rustling sound finally dissipated. The two of them stared at Chu Liyue. Even though Song had mentally prepared himself for this, he was still shocked when he saw this scene with his own eyes. The messed yuan gravel around Chu Liyue seemed to be wrapped in a layer of transparent film. It almost became a small stream, floating around Chu Liyue and flowing quietly. The aura contained in it was extremely powerful. It was almost daunting. Chu Liyue's face was extremely pale, and her eyes were bloodshot. Fortunately, the aura around her was still stable. She exhaled softly and looked at the messed yuan gravel flowing around her. Suddenly, a small piece of ice crystal slowly condensed on it. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. It was starting to condense. The messed yuan gravel on Qingyuan Mountain had all been gathered. Xuanhuan also noticed this scene and immediately said, "It's fine. It's coming." Chu Liyue raised her hand. A vigorous origin power crazily gushed out from her body. It instantly surrounded the messed yuan gravel. Then, the messed yuan gravel began to condense at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it had completely formed a large piece of red ice crystal. Just as Chu Liyue was about to destroy it, the red ice crystal suddenly began to shrink. Chu Liyue frowned and quickly glanced at Xuanhuan. What's going on? Xuanhuan also had a grave expression. It shouldn't be like this. Your power is compressing it. What? Chu Liyue was confused. She didn't do anything. According to what Xuanhuan said before, after the messed yuan gravel began to condense, she just needed to quickly destroy it. She had done exactly as he had told her to. But before she could do anything, this thing had. Before Chu Liyue could react, Xuanhuan had already rushed over and punched out. It seemed that he was going to attack directly. Chu Liyue suddenly had an idea. Wait. Xuanhuan stopped abruptly. What's wrong? This thing is very dangerous. If we don't deal with it as soon as possible, wait. Chu Liyue seemed to have noticed something. She shook her head and signaled Xuanhuan to step back. Song, who was standing outside, also felt that something was wrong. He asked worriedly, "What's going on? What's going on?" Xuanhuan frowned and shook his head. Chu Liyue gave him a look that said, "Don't be impatient." The few of them fell silent. Only their eyes were fixed on the red ice crystal that was still shrinking. When it had shrunk to the size of a palm, it finally stopped. The color was rich, smooth and bright like a ruby. It quietly floated in front of Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue hesitantly reached out and took the red ice crystal in her hand. It was cold to the touch, but she could faintly feel the surging energy within it. The next moment, the red ice crystal suddenly entered her body through the wound on her palm. Song and Xuanhuan's hearts skipped a beat when they saw this scene. Chu Luiyue was suddenly stunned. Because the ice crystal seemed to have melted after coming into contact with her blood. It followed her yuan meridian and spread all the way to Dantian? The water droplet quietly floated in the air. The next moment, the red ice crystal was completely swallowed by it. A gentle energy slowly flowed out of it and nourished Chu Luiyue's limbs and bones. Chu Luiyue was dumbfounded. After a while, she suddenly thought of something and asked the water droplet in disbelief. You deliberately swallowed the energy in the messed yuan gravel? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.